Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
A Monday edition of the Sports Bash is live. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. What's up, everybody? Well, the weekend is in the books. We'll take a look back at the Phillies, what they did out in Seattle, which was not great Friday and Saturday, but was yesterday a kind of foreshadowing of maybe this team kind of snapping out of it. I got a couple thoughts on that. You'll hear what a former major leaguer had to say about what he's seen from the Phillies, and I don't know that he's wrong. We'll have that coming up for you in a couple of moments for now. John McMullen at 3 o'clock today will give us some insight and updates on the Eagles as they continue at training camp. And, of course, the Phillies play the Dodgers tonight out in L.A. is really a big series. We're going to dive into the Phils to start things off. Mike McGarry, Bob Wankel. Fun show today. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend. You know, those Phillies late night games on Fridays and Saturdays, you almost were like out of sight, out of mind, but they were so bad. You know, Friday we were over at Charlie's in Summers Point, and man, what a great crowd at Charlie's in Summers Point. Ton of people came out. Thanks to all the people. Thanks to Charlie's. But remember, the game was at 10 o'clock that night, 9:40. And Nick and I were talking about it. And, you know, he was saying about Tyler Phillips being the stopper. And I'm like, all right, everybody, like, seriously, we need to stop acting like these guys come in and pitch 2 or 3 really good games, and then that's who they are. I told you on Friday that Tyler Phillips probably wasn't going to get out of the third inning of that game. Eventually, it's all going to start evening out, and Tyler Phillips becomes Tyler Phillips. You can't keep relying on guys like that. They are guys who are, quote-unquote, spot starters for a reason. There's a reason why these guys don't start the year with the club or they bounce around. They aren't consistent enough. And I'm not saying that Tyler Phillips, you know, is a complete disaster, but it was eventually going to run out on you. And I felt pretty strongly that Friday night, that night was going to be the night it ran out on him. You just can't show that kind of consistency night in and night out when you have to come out and pitch. And he was awful on Friday night. He was terrible in the game. And that wasn't the surprise. The surprise, you know, he gives up, the Mariners scored like 7 runs in the second inning, and the game was over. I mean, the game was over after that. The home run he gives up in the first kind of sets the tone for what you knew was about to happen, right? And Phillips could not get out of the second inning. He ends up giving up 8 runs, all earned, 3 homers. Very reminiscent of Michael Mercado, who pitched really well his first night, and then got bombed for 3 home runs his second game, and then bombed for 3 more home runs the next time he pitched. You can't keep relying on the Tyler Phillips of the world. And that's where one area where I think the Phillies, you know, are trying to figure out if they can get Taijuan Walker back and just kind of eat those innings up. Spencer Turnbull, he's going to be out for a little bit while longer. But there were a couple things, you know, they give up the 7 runs, the 3 home runs. He just absolutely couldn't keep the ball in the park. And that's not a very good Mariners lineup, by the way. But it just kind of felt like a night. I felt like you're going out west, Phillips, everybody's kind of hoping that he's the guy. And I'm like, this just doesn't feel like a game where you're going to win. And no, that game is definitely not surprising, the 10-2 game. But there were a couple positives in the game. By the way, late in the game, Marsh, who has 4 hits in a row now against left-handed pitching. Maybe Marsh is starting to come around a little bit here, and maybe he's just starting to, you know, kind of come into his own. We hope so, right? I think if you take a look at the game Friday night, the biggest takeaway is the fact that Phillips was a concern. And then after that, they go to the bullpen, and they kind of, you know, kept the game at bay. You know, Ruiz came in, did his job. Marte gave up, I think, a run. Banks came in, 2 innings, 3 strikeouts. Good to see there. Alvarado, another run. Alvarado, a little shaky, gave up a homer, if memory serves. I think Alvarado served up a long ball late in that game, and then Garrett Stubbs gets called on for the third time, I think, this year. So Friday night, Phillips is the story in that one. Really, though, a couple stories. No hits for Turner, no hits for Harper, and that was a theme for Friday night. And then again on Saturday. The game on Saturday is a frustrating one. All right, so let's look at the game on Saturday, 6-5, and that's a 5-run lead, and that needs to be addressed here, right? That's one that we have to kind of put the screw. The first game, I gave you 4 minutes on that one. That's the best I could do for you. Friday night, I expected a blowout loss or a game where Phillips just didn't have it, and I got it. You get a 5-run lead, especially with your team struggling the way it is, and you have to go to a bullpen game. So they go to Kerkering. Allard actually gives you a pretty good outing. He comes in 4 innings, and then you turn the game over in the 5th to Hoffman. Now, there's a couple things here. The game's in the 6th, excuse me. You're going to Hoffman in the 6th. I thought was a little early in the game for Hoffman. All right, I'm going to Hoffman, a guy that I usually call on to close games out. I'm bringing him in the 6th inning, and he gets tattooed. I mean, he just could not get the ball by anybody the other night. 4 hits, 4 runs. He walked the guy. It just was very un-Hoffman-like. And there's your game, right? You have a lead, a 5-run lead, and you figure, all right, in the 6th, I got Hoffman, Strahm, Alvarado, and Estevez. If I get those 4 guys in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th with a 5-run lead, whew, that's got to be lights out, baby. That's got to be signed, sealed, and delivered. And that was very disappointing. Now, do I think Hoffman, is going to give up 4 runs? And by the way, if anybody who was watching that game in the 10th when Estevez comes in, I mean, he strikes the guy out and just awful calls by the umpires. But hey, he ends up walking 2, walks the game-winning run with the bases loaded, and that's how you end up losing the game. Now, listen, you can complain all you want about the umpires. It is what it is. I mean, you had a 5-run lead in that game. But the positive signs in that game started to trickle a little bit. Harper with a double, Turner with the double, Bohm with 3 RBI, Marsh with a couple of ribbies. He had 2 hits. So you started to see, okay, we lost this game, very frustrating, and the way you lose that game. You score 5, you have a lead, and your bullpen of all things, which you felt like you improved, which you felt that you finally got the stopper, and that allows the Strahms and the Hoffmans and the Alvarados to kind of mix and match around, and you got it set up, and Hoffman is the guy who just coughs it up for you. But, as we just kind of hinted at, you saw a little bit of the signs in that 5th inning, and then, of course, they scored 4 in the 5th and nothing else. But there were a couple signs with a couple of guys. The Harper double we talked about, the Turner double, and then all of a sudden, yesterday, you had one of the better days of the year for the Phillies. Offensively, I mean, they just broke out 6 runs, but it was the way they got the 6 runs. And by the way, the Wheeler start yesterday, you absolutely had to have it. 8 innings, 2 hits, 9 strikeouts, just the 1 walk. He was as crisp as you've seen him in a long time. And when your team needed a stopper, there was Wheeler. But the big story was Schwarber with 3 hits and the home run. And, of course, and by the way, Schwarber doubled in the game, too. Harper, 3 for 4 with a home run. That was the biggest encouraging sign of the whole thing, was that Harper finally kind of looked like, hey, maybe this little slump is finally coming to an end. You had 10 hits in the game, 3 from Schwarber, 2 from Harper, Bohm, Marsh, Realmuto, Stott had a hit. So you started to get a little bit of something from the offense. You finally get it, and then Wheeler, absolutely magnificent yesterday. So it sets up now, which is a very, very big series for a couple of reasons. One, I saw over the weekend, people talking about the Phillies going to blow the division. They're 6 games up on the Braves. Atlanta's lost 2 in a row. So really, nothing has kind of changed from what we were on Friday. I think the Phillies were 6.5 up. Now they're 6, so they lost a half a game over the weekend. They're at 66 wins. The Dodgers are at 65. If you want that number one seed, if you think that home field advantage in the playoffs is important to you, this is the series. This starts it right here. The Dodgers, and here we go. Here's the pitching matchups for the series at Chavez Ravine. Nola tonight against Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow's a stud. Now, Nola's been very good this year. Not Cy Young good. Glasnow is more in that Cy Young good category. But it's a Nola Glasnow. Awesome pitching matchup tonight. Sanchez and Kershaw. Now, Kershaw's not the same Kershaw that, everybody remembers. He's a shell of himself, but he's a left-handed pitcher, and that is a problem for your offense. And, should be a fun game tomorrow night. And then Wednesday, it's Tyler Phillips again against Gavin Stone. I probably give the check mark. I definitively give the check mark to Stone, who's been very good this year. So it's 3 intriguing pitching matchups. You snap a 6-game losing streak, and now you go into this one with a little bit of positivity. But here's what former Major Leaguer Eric Hosmer, remember Eric Hosmer played for the Royals teams that won the World Series about 8 years ago. He ponders this question about the Phillies as they hit August and are kind of heading out west here and have been basically somewhere between 8 to 10 games up in the division for quite some times now. He asked, are the Phillies just bored?
This is a team that just wants to get there. They want to get to October. When October happens, they're going to feel that different energy in the stadium. So I don't know if I'd call it bored, but I think they're certainly anticipating that. But at the same time, they got to realize that their home field is a huge advantage for them. So they need to do whatever they can to lock up home field advantage. So if they are bored, that's some motivation for them to go out there and finish strong in the regular season.
An interesting thought process there. Are they just bored? Are they just kind of waiting to get to October? This is a team that's been in October not once, but twice, and it's all the same guys. Like, how motivating is it to look around and say, hey, we know who we are. We know where we're going. Now, I know as a fan, nobody wants to hear that. But as Eric Hosmer, former MLB first baseman with the Kansas City Royals, says, he actually thinks what's going on right now is good for them.
I love it for Philly. I think it's great. I think during the course of a 162-game season, you're going to have these times at some point in time. When you look back on some of the teams that have won 100-plus, 90-plus games, there's times where you're going to go through ruts like this, and obviously you want to limit those as much as possible. But I think Philly's a team that everything was going so good for them in the beginning. To hit a stretch like this, to hopefully get out of it in September and then get hot and play your best baseball into October, I think is going to be just something that gets them going.
You guys agree? 609-403-0973. See, I saw a lot of panic on Friday and Saturday. A lot of people starting to hit the panic button. This team just isn't that good. He suggested these struggles are good for them. This is what a team like this needs. This is what a team needs at this time of the year. Get it out of the way now. Kind of go through your rough patch, or is it more than that? Do you guys watch this team and disagree with what Eric Hosmer has to say? Do you think it's more than just being bored and that the struggles are the good for this team? Or do you think it's, no, this team is struggling because there's more to it than them just kind of struggling right now? Look, a couple things. One, Bryce Harper breaks an 0-for-24 streak. I mean, if Bryce Harper goes 0-for-24, you're not going to win a lot of games, right? You're just not. You can't expect to win a lot of games with the middle of your lineup, Bryce Harper, going 0-for-24. He comes up in a lot of big spots and he double plays and he strikes out, and he just was feeling it. Now, I love what he said after the game the other day. He said, we're the best team in baseball. We're the best team. We have the most wins. And he said, sometimes even you got to tell like little Johnny in Little League, hey, sometimes you're the best player and you're just going to not have a good streak and you're going to come around. So I like that Harper wasn't his body language sometimes has not displayed that he hasn't been frustrated. And of course, you're frustrated when you're 0-for-24. But overall, over the years, 361 batting average in 2023, 381 in 2022, and 337 in 2021. Bryce Harper in Philadelphia. 37 home runs in the month of August from the time he signed in Philly to where he is now. Generally, Bryce Harper wakes up in the month of October. So maybe he was, in fact, bored. Maybe he was a little, hey, you know what? Hit the snooze button. It's July. Wake me up. I know Green Day says wake me up when September ends, but maybe it's Harper saying wake me up when July is over. Kyle Schwarber, when he hits a leadoff home run, Phillies are 17-4. That's been a big weapon for them. He kind of gives them that little boost. And, of course, Schwarber hit one the other day. That's always good. And then the pitching. Wheeler, 5 starts this season, going at least 6 innings, giving up 2 hits or fewer. When he throws like he did yesterday, you feel a lot differently about this team. So a lot of interesting storylines as they now go into this Dodgers series. Tough set of games. Glasnow, Kershaw, Stone. Can you go out there after – we talked about this the other day. What's a positive series weekend? I think we both kind of suggested like 5-5, 6-4 on this road trip. And I said, you want to do it actually where you start off kind of slow, which will be frustrating to the fans, but you start to play better as the road trip goes on, and it has the makings of that. 1 and 2, can you get 2 out of 3 here, and then you get yourself to around 500 as you go to Arizona?
I think that what Hosmer said was interesting, the second part. I don't know if I agree with the first part about them being bored, only because of the fact that how visibly annoyed some of the guys are, like your Harpers and your Turners and your guys like that, who they know they can play better and they're not hitting the ball. So I don't think they were bored necessarily, but I do think somebody said for the fact that get the struggles out of the way now. You know what? Struggle in July, because it is July. If you have a losing record in July, who cares? Because you know what? If you get hot in September and October, that's what really matters.
Look, we all know that what matters the most is how you're playing in October. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of teams. We talked about this last week. The Phillies, the Braves, the Brewers, and the Dodgers. They are the 4 top teams in the National League. All 4 of them had a losing record in the month of July. Every one of them. Philadelphia, Atlanta, Milwaukee, and the Dodgers. They all left July with a losing record. Do they all stink?
Nope.
No. It's a long season. And bored isn't the word. It is tough to be motivated every single day in and day out. Your routines kind of get to you a little bit here. Now, you can take a look at the big picture and still ask some questions about the Phillies. See, this is why I don't get concerned with what I've seen from the Phillies. Because the guys who it's coming from. Like if Bryce Harper, I don't think that Bryce Harper is an 0 for 24 guy.
Right.
Bryce Harper has shown and displayed that he can carry a team at times. Now, the problem has been sometimes they get cold. A lot of these times, that's been the frustrating part. But we know that. So I don't think the Phillies are looking at Bryce Harper and saying, well, he's a problem, and Trey Turner's a problem, and Kyle Schwarber's a problem. No, these are all part of the solutions, and you have to think that those guys are going to turn it around here, and you saw a little bit of the signs of that yesterday.
Yeah, and don't forget about the fact that this team has not been a great team on the road this year. And as Hosmer said, listen, they are a great team at home. So now is the time, say, look, put July behind you. Let's get we got the stink out of our system, right? We got the whatever you want to call it, the bad mojo, whatever. And Harper broke the 0 for streak. Schwarber's back to hitting home runs. Wheeler had a great game yesterday. Theoretically, they could have and should have won the game on Saturday. So they are finally coming back around. But sometimes you gotta embrace the suck, Mike.
Sometimes, yep. You gotta just kind of own it and say, hey, even though we've been really bad in the month of July, we still have the largest division lead in baseball. Now, I think the AL East is now 6.5 games. Let me double check. Yeah, the Orioles and Yankees are tied for first place, and they are 6.5 games up. So they have the second largest lead. They have the largest lead in the National League, and their 66 wins is now actually tied for second, or is second. 3 teams have 67 wins. The Orioles, the Yankees, and the Guardians all now have more wins than the Phillies do at 66, but they still have the most wins. So your struggles didn't hamper your lead. It didn't really cut in. Now, you did have a 9.5 game lead, I think was the high mark, maybe 10?
They had 10 at one point.
Right. So you had a 10-game lead at one point, and now you're down to 6. But 6 is still pretty cushiony with 2 months left. Now, we have seen teams blow leads of 6. The Phillies famously in 2017 were 7 back with 17 to play, and the Mets coughed that lead up. But I don't know that the Phillies are in danger of coughing up the 6-game lead. We'll see. And we talked about it on Friday at Charlie's. If this Friday the Phillies are 4.5, I think you can start to get a little tight.
I think the big part of this also is the fact that, listen, the Phillies still have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, Mike. It's not like their pitching has been bad all year. The problem recently has been the hitters have struggled for the most part. It hasn't necessarily been the pitching consistently. So I think that as long as the pitching can maintain, the hitters will come around and you'll be fine.
Tim in Summers Point. Mike, we all have Eagles PTSD from last year. Yeah, I've heard a lot of that. You know, the Eagles getting out to the 10-1 and then falling apart. Right. I had a guy last week tell me, 1964, he sees visions of that. Look, this Phillies team's pretty good, right? This is a good Phillies team. Let's see what happens out in L.A. They do have flaws. We're going to talk about them. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, set to join me here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Watch the show on the X platform, at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. We got tons of good stuff coming up, including Mike McGarry, John McMullen, Bob Wankel, Football at 4. Today's Big Three. Vic Fangio spoke today. The gruff Vic Fangio. He's going to be a popular listen, I think, with the audience all season long. He had some really good answers and one-liners today, as we'll play some of the audio from his press conference. That's all today on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City and streaming live on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SBLive.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
With Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:28, Phil's in L.A. tonight. Big series with the Dodgers. 3 really fun pitching matchups. This one tonight, Nola and Glasnow, probably the best of them all. Sanchez and Kershaw tomorrow, and then a couple of young guys. Stone for the Dodgers. Phillips did not pitch well Friday night, by the way, for the Phillies. And those are some of the things that we're taking a look at. How important is this series with the Dodgers? Do we start to see a little signs that the Phils are coming out of this? Eric Hosmer, former Royal, suggested, the Phillies just kind of look bored right now. You look at a team that looks bored, Mike, or is this a team that has more problems than we're kind of, leading on?
No, I don't think they look bored. I think they look like a team that had struggled mightily both Friday and Saturday with, 2 of what would have to be the worst losses of the season, maybe considering, how they lost the games and the timing of the losses. But then they come back yesterday, all of a sudden the ball finds Brandon Marsh's glove out in center field. And sometimes in baseball, a quirky play like that is all you need to turn your season around. Next thing you know, Stott's homering and Bryce Harper's homering, and you win a game, you push the lead back to 6 games. But I think this 3-game series in L.A. is important to sustain kind of the momentum turn that they had yesterday.
Yeah, I guess the one big thing with yesterday, it's good to see Harper and then hearing what he said afterwards, hey, we're still the best team. We didn't play all that well, but even so, you look up at the division, we're still 6 games up. We still have the most wins in the National League. There is a little bit of truth to that as poorly as they have played, they still have kind of pushed through and persevered with a 6-game lead, which is the biggest in the National League and the most wins still.
Yeah, I mean, I feel good about where they are, but I want to see them continue to play. I want to see them play better or play like they did Sunday and not the way they played Friday and Saturday. Again, if they would have dropped 2 of 3 to the Dodgers or get swept out in Los Angeles, then I think yesterday is the blip on the radar screen, right? I think yesterday they need to play well in Los Angeles and win some games out there to sort of sustain what they did yesterday. Otherwise, the narrative, this isn't, I think the thing that troubles me is this isn't, wasn't just a week, a 6-game losing streak. They were, I guess they're 21-26 since they returned from London, and that was June 10th. So you're almost talking a 2-month period. That's 47 games. That's a pretty big sample size. So, I think this is a team that needs to turn it around and get back on its winning ways, and it can't live off its April and May laurels.
Yeah, and the positives I think you look at, Mike, is the guys who were struggling, that to me is the one thing. Like if Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber are going to struggle, then yes, I would expect your team's ceiling to not be very high, right? I mean, so this isn't like they were winning or losing games with those guys performing. No, you were losing because those guys were not performing. I think there's a little bit more of the silver lining there.
Yeah, and, the bullpen, obviously, that had pitched so well the first part of the season. I mean, Saturday night was Hoffman. The last couple of times out, it was Strahm. Alvarado has struggled. The bullpen was not as, secure or pitched as well as they did early in the season. So, eventually Bryce Harper was going to hit. He wasn't going to go 1 for the rest of the season. Eventually Trey Turner's going to hit. Kyle Schwarber with a big leadoff home run yesterday. Eventually these guys are going to hit. Again, it just seems to be almost a roll of the dice. Are they going to be hot come October 1st, or are they going to be cold, and are they going to be able to stay hot through all of October, something they couldn't do last year?
Yeah, Mike, and the big thing, too, yesterday, was Wheeler, him coming out, giving you that kind of performance. When you see that, kind of calms you down a little bit and thinking about all the different negatives that have been surrounding this team. The win they had yesterday, the way that happened, and you talked about the catch. Marsh, he doesn't even know where the ball is. It falls right into his glove. The fact that Harper homers, 3 hits there, Schwarber homers, but the game Wheeler gives you, that is like the jumping off point. And then, of course, baseball, you see what happens tonight. But that one felt like, all right, the month of October, August is here. Let's crank it back up.
Yeah, Wheeler did what the number one starter is supposed to do. What he didn't do that first game of the Yankees series, where the Yankees got all over him, right?
Yep.
But yesterday he goes out, throws 8 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, no runs. That was exactly what the Phillies needed from Zach Wheeler. That's exactly what you need from your number one starter, changing the narrative of that game. And let's remember, even though the game ended up 6-0, it was 1-0 in the 7th or 8th inning.
Yeah.
So Wheeler did an outstanding job and gave the Phillies exactly what they needed yesterday.
That's a good point. The game was they said it during the broadcast. This was a good, well-pitched game into the 8th, really. I mean, you went into it, and then the Phillies broke it open there. The game on Friday night, the Tyler Phillips game, when you see something like that, I know a lot of people were excited about Phillips, and he seemed like you were just waiting for that to kind of happen. And it kind of stresses how much the Phillies have to kind of, get those guys at the back end of the rotation back sooner than later.
Yeah, we talked about it right on Friday. We said, what is Tyler Phillips going to look like coming off that complete game shutout? Is he going to have a negative bounce back from that complete game shutout? And he did. Tyler Phillips is a guy who pitches to contact, doesn't come out and blow hitters away, right? And when you're that type of pitcher, if your command is off, you are going to get drilled because you're going to leave pitches up and over the plate. And that's exactly what happened on Friday night. If you're a guy who misses bats and you don't have great command, maybe you could sort of skate by. But if you're a command guy, a pitch-to-contact guy like Tyler Phillips, and you don't have it, what's going to happen is what's going to happen on Friday night, where you're just going to leave balls over the plate and they're going to hit the ball in the upper deck. I'm not giving up on Tyler Phillips yet. I don't think he's the guy that pitched a complete game shutout, but I also don't think he's the guy who gave up 8 runs in 1 2/3 innings.
Well, and it's funny, Mike, we talk about it all the time. You pitch the complete game shutout the one day, and then your next start, it's not gone well for those guys. So for all the conversations about let these guys finish these games out, I don't know if it's just circumstance or what, but that generally means the next game has not gone well for the guy who goes with the complete game shutout.
Yeah, and we talked about it right on Friday. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a natural letdown. Maybe it's just, the odds evening out and stuff like that. But, head for the hills if you see somebody go a complete game shutout and they're starting the next game 5 days later, basically.
You're right, man. It's funny. It seems to happen go back to last year with Michael Lorenzen throws the no-hitter, then he was terrible after that, pretty much for the rest of the season. He never pitched a good game again after that. And I guess all the people who argue about pitch counts say, look, see, you can't throw that many pitches in a game. You got to get those guys out of there. And then other people might say, it's just more circumstance. But whatever it was, Phillips was terrible Friday night, and you said anything he threw, they pounded him in that second inning. So we'll see how much longer they go there. We'll see if they can get some of these other guys at the back end. Because keep that in mind, you still have 2 months of innings that need to be filled, and you can't keep throwing Orion Kirkering, in the bullpen games like they did on Saturday. And Tyler Phillips, if he's not going to be consistent, that's 2 spots in the rotation that are questionable between now and the end of the summer season if you can't get the Walker or Turnbull back.
Yeah, well, it sounds like that Ranger Suarez, they had hoped he would come back against Arizona, had a little bit of a setback with his back. Now it appears that, he's back on the right track again. So he'll probably, hopefully come back for the Phillies when they return home. And Taijuan Walker, again, is a factor out there. I mean, I don't think he pitched that well in his rehab start up at Reading last week, but we'll see where he develops. And those are 2 guys, that are going to be coming back. Because it's obvious, look, Kobe Albert pitched a solid game last Saturday night as the bulk guy. Phillips has been, good here in these roles, but I don't think you want to rely on either one of these guys long term. All
right, big series in L.A. starts tonight. It's Nola against Glass. Now, what are we looking at in this 3-game set between, really, if you're somebody who thinks the number 1 seed is, paramount, you've got to be able to get 2 out of 3 in this series against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I guess looks like the Phillies are up about a game and a half, I think, on the Dodgers. 2 games in the loss column. 2 or 3 might be a tough order here, but I still look for the Phillies. 5-5 on this road trip. That's why yesterday was so big. They're 1-2 on the trip right now, so they've got to go 4-3 over the next 7 games to go 500. Where if they lose yesterday, all of a sudden now you're looking at going 5-2 on the road trip, and that's probably tough to do. I think it'll be an interesting test. I think great pitching matchup tonight with Nola and Glass now. Now, Wheeler responded yesterday with an outstanding start. Let's see if Nola can kind of carry the baton and go forward tonight and deliver a good outing for the Phillies.
Yep, and obviously the Nola game tonight against Glass now, that starts you off. And as Mike just said, it's Clayton Kershaw, and he's back now against Christopher Sanchez. And Christopher Sanchez, he becomes an important figure into this rotation now. As you mentioned, Suarez not there, and the spot behind him kind of up in the air. They need a big game from Sanchez, and he needs to kind of find that form that he had that made him an All-Star. Because you mentioned it. A lot of these guys who made the All-Star game, Hoffman the other night, they brought him in the 6th inning, and he just did not have it. And those are the things that you worry about in the second half of the season. Can you perform to the same level as you did? How many times we see a guy make the All-Star game, and in the second half of the season, you're like, that guy made the All-Star game?
Nick Castellanos last year, right? I mean, he makes the All-Star game with a great first half, cools off in the second half last year, then gets hot for the first 2 weeks of the playoffs, and then finishes up cold. Happens a lot. What happened with Hoffman, you knew that Hoffman and Strom were both going to have a little bit of market correction, but maybe we didn't anticipate this much of a market correction, basically.
Yeah, that was a big one because they, were you surprised they brought him so early in the 6th?
Well, I saw, the lineup that they were facing. It was sort of the heart of the order, and with Estevez on the back end, now that frees Hoffman up to go attack those pockets of orders in the 6th inning. So I was not surprised that he brought Hoffman in there. I think Kobe Allred had done a good job as the bulk guy, but how long do you want to go, spin the wheel of chance with Kobe Allred before that comes up, snake eyes, or whatever analogy you want to use. So I'm not surprised they went to Hoffman. He just didn't have it. And, it cost them one of their worst losses of the season.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, Mike, you have a 5-run lead, and you say I have Hoffman, Strom, Alvarado, and Estevez still at my disposal with a 5-run lead.
Yeah,
you got to shut the door, right?
Right, exactly. And that's why, the Friday night game and the blowout game, that's why they put Garrett Stubbs in there to sort of, for the third time in 11 days, to sort of save your core, your high leverage relievers for the next day when you got a lead. So that's what made the loss on Saturday so painful, is you had your high level guys lined up to protect a 5-run lead, and you couldn't do it.
Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City, pressofatlanticcity.com. By the way, the Dodgers are plus 300. They're the favorites to win the World Series. The Phillies are next, plus 450. They'll meet tonight in L.A. By the way, the Yankees are plus 500. The Orioles are plus 700. Then the Braves come in after that. So it's still a Dodgers and Phillies world. As much as those two teams, both teams had a losing record in the month of July, yet they're still the favorites to win the World Series. We got 2 months left to go, and it starts tonight out in L.A. Dodgers and Phillies will be wrapping up the series when Mike's back on Wednesday. Mike McGarry, everybody. Thanks, bud.
All right, Mike, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
All right. By the way, Mike's Mets are 50-1 to win the World Series. I'll tell you what, though. There's so many value plays right now in baseball. If you take a look at like some value bets, if you're just kind of like somebody who's like, hey, give me a long shot. How about Pittsburgh at 100-1? If they got into the playoff field with that pitching. Now, Skeens is kind of hitting the slump a little bit, starting to get some innings added up there. But if that team got in, another interesting team, Arizona, 40-1. Seattle, 30-1. The Padres, 25-1. Why do I like those teams? Seattle, really good pitching. Arizona, strong pitching. San Diego, good pitching. The teams that have good pitching, that if you face them in a playoff series, I like the value on some of those teams. Cleveland Guardians, 14-1. I really kind of think Cleveland might be the best team in the American League. I like them in Baltimore. I still love Baltimore's pitching. Baltimore's bullpen is the Phillies bullpen, but like the other guys. They got Kimbrel, Dominguez, and Soto. Soto blew up a game the other night. He got called in to close the game for Baltimore the other night, and he couldn't get the job done. It's wide open, everybody. It is wide open. Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Hey, we were at Charlie's on Friday. We had a great time. I'll tell you what, that was an awesome crowd. So many people came out and said hello. We had like a whole corner of the bar just filled up with people that were coming up and saying, hey, appreciate the show and all that stuff. No, I appreciate you guys stopping out there. That was awesome. We gave away, we opened up 10 spots for 99 bottles. They went so fast that we opened up 5 more and they blew out the door. So we are, giving away spots for 99 bottles at our next stop. And I'm going to give details on where we will be for our next Happy Hour Friday live show, which is on August the 23rd. I got details on that coming up next here on the Sports Bash. Plus, some interesting stuff. Vic Fangio, you'll hear some stuff from him. He spoke earlier today. He's got some great one-liners, man. He's going to be a great comment press conference all season long. More Sports Bash on the way. Hit me up on the text board, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Thoughts on the Phils? We're going to get into the Eagles at 3 o'clock with John McMullen. That's all coming up here on the Sports Bash.
It's the Sports.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
249 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Hit us up on the text board. We'll read and react. 609 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. A lot of reaction to the Phillies this weekend. Eagles back at training camp, which this week is the week that they will have the lead up to their first game in Baltimore against the Ravens. So we'll get into that with John McMullen in about 10 minutes from now. Also, Football at 4 today with Mosher. What is Vic Fangio seeing from his defense? You'll hear from him coming up later on in the show as well, including a player on the current team that he said he tried to trade for when he was the defensive coordinator in Miami. So you wonder what that means for that particular player this season. I think one of the fun stories that I've heard this weekend, you know, Saquon Barkley was asked what it was like about coming out of the tunnel, and he's like, yeah, it's like basically felt like college. There was like over 50,000 people at the Link. Now, I saw some video to just put it into perspective. The Phillies were out in Seattle this weekend, and the Seahawks had their practice at whatever it's called, Lumen Field or whatever. They barely filled the bottom bowl. Think about that. Seattle's got a good fan base, the 12s, yada, yada. It was empty. It was empty out there. How about the Eagles draft choice, the kid from Michigan? His name's Tyler, the guard. Was it Keegan? Yeah, Trevor Keegan. That's it. He said that the atmosphere at Lincoln Financial Field on Friday night was louder. Was it Friday night or Thursday night? He said that the stadium was louder for the practice than Michigan Stadium. Now remember, Michigan has 110,000 fans in that joint. He's trying to convince me, and I don't even know that I believe him, that the 50,000 Eagle fans that went to the Link on Thursday night were louder than the crowds he heard at Michigan with 110,000 people. He said, quote, I even got a little emotional getting over to the stadium on Thursday for the practice. I don't know how many people were there, but it was louder than Michigan Stadium. Definitely. It was rocking. I got goosebumps, Keegan said. Do you believe him?
I don't know if I believe him. I mean, I feel like that might be a little hyperbole on his part.
It sounds like it.
Now, if you would have said for a spring game, maybe I would have believed him more.
Yeah, I just have a hard time thinking that 50,000 Eagle fans at the Link are louder and more energy rocking than 110,000 Michigan fans at the Big House.
Especially for like an Ohio State game or a Michigan State game or any of those rivalry games.
Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State. You're telling
Wisconsin.
Me that the Link was, I call BS on that one, Trevor Keegan.
I think Trevor's just trying to do his best to be Nick Sirianni and be pandering to the fans.
He really but that was the theme of the weekend. You know, same thing, our buddy Jeff Kerr said the same thing about Saquon Barkley. He said, I think when you think about it, when you leave college, the NFL's on another level with the stadiums and the vibe. You never really get that college feeling, but you get that here in Philly. I'm excited to go out there and play for those guys, to play for this fan base. Every week, I'm going to try to give them 100% and try to compete at a high level. But that was really the theme, was how amazed these new Eagles were for the open practice on Thursday night. Just the sheer amount of people and passion and energy.
And listen, I can appreciate the fact that these guys are not used to that. They're not used to going to a practice and getting that kind of a reaction. I'm sure they're not used to that. And it's cool to see the Eagle fans are still willing to do that.
I saw the video of the Seahawks, and it's not normal.
No.
It's not normal. It's not normal to see that happen where 50,000 people come out. I don't know, like, I guess Green Bay probably gets a pretty big...
I would say Green Bay is the only one that I can think. I know Andrew Brandon has talked about on his podcast about how, like, Packer fans show up for, like, every single event in the offseason.
Which player is making a strong impression on the Eagles veterans? John McMullen has the latest. Plus, more Sports Bash on the way, including the Eagles storylines that you need to watch this weekend, or Friday night, I should say, in the Eagles-Ravens game. Nakobe Dean what is his role so far? Where is he on the defense? And you'll hear from Vic Fangio later on in the show tonight here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SBLive.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
3 o'clock hour, Sports Bash Hour 2. We look at the Eagles as the Phillies get ready for the Dodgers tonight. The Eagles getting ready for the Baltimore Ravens. Busy week for the Philly sports teams. One out west, the other heading to Baltimore. Some of the storylines that we'll be looking at on Friday night start now as the Eagles at the NovaCare Complex. Vic Fangio met with the media earlier today. Had some interesting things to say, man. He's going to be fun all season long. John McMullen, Birds 365, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. He was there today for Vic Fangio, and there's a lot of things to discuss as this team is getting ready for the first preseason game. What else is happening this week, John, as the Eagles get ready for the Ravens? Is this the week? Are they doing the inter-squad practices this week as well?
No, they are not doing joint practices. Typically they have a history of doing them with the Ravens, but they play the Ravens in the regular season. So that kind of nixed any idea of doing that this year. A couple years ago when they had joint practices with the Jets, they played the Jets in the season, but that was pre-Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think they were concerned about the Jets. Whereas the Ravens are projected to be one of the better teams in the NFL. So I'm not sure if they wanted the Ravens to gain too much information because of that regular season game.
All right, so they'll get ready for the Ravens. Let's talk about to start here, a guy that we haven't talked a whole heck of a lot, and that's Jalen Hurts. And now that we've got like a week and a little bit more of him in this offense, there was a lot of talk last year about the injury, and then oddly in the offseason there was no real hey, he was playing with this all season or that all season. Jalen Hurts, how does he look in this offense? And are you noticing a, kind of a different version of Jalen Hurts now in 2024?
Yeah, I think he's got more juice, closer to what he was. I think if you go back to last season, even prior to the knee injury, which kind of, everybody latched on to, as he didn't look like his explosive self, especially in the running game. Really, if you go back to week 1, he didn't look like it in New England. So I do think there were some physical issues going on, and he looks much healthier. And the pep in his step is back, and he looks more explosive, and that should be a big plus for the Eagles' offense because, they're difficult to deal with when both parts of the equation are on the table at a high level with Jalen Hurts, and that means the running game and the passing game.
Yeah, and that was the big thing is, when he I don't know, do we all agree that when he did take off and have some design runs, which seemed to be fewer, just him in general just did not seem to have that extra gear last year?
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody saw it and everybody recognized it and said something was off, and whatever that was, again, the knee injury kind of explained it in season, but that didn't explain it week 1 when he didn't look like he had his same explosiveness against New England. So I think there were, he's had multiple ankle surgeries the 2 prior years, not this year, but the 2 prior years. And I think that might have been a bigger deal than people gave credence to, and it's understandable. Anytime you're dealing with any kind of leg injury with a player that's got to show that explosiveness, it can affect them. Obviously, he still played at a relatively high level, but I think if you bring that back to the table, I think you have a a much better player.
Offensive line, obviously, that's going to be fluid at the right guard spot, or is it? Is Mekhi Becton, is it starting to become clear that he'll be the guy, or is it we're not quite there yet?
No, we're not quite there yet. And in fact, Tyler Steen returned to practice today from his ankle injury, but he was just limited. It's just working in individuals. So he's getting closer to be back in the mix. And Mekhi was limited as well. He's been dealing with some kind of illness over the past 2 days. So he hasn't been up to full speed either. He took some team reps today, but was on a pitch count. He left early. He was talking to a trainer at one point, and it was Brett Toth who finished up, and then Brett had to move to center because Cam Jurgens had to leave a little bit early, and then Matt Hennessy was taking the right guard reps. So still a lot of uncertainty, but I would say, when we started camp, I think Tyler Steen was the favorite. He missed just over a week. We'll see if he's back at team drills tomorrow or Wednesday of this week. He better get back as quickly as possible. I will say that, because now it's starting to trend towards Mekhi Becton.
Well, I was going to say, is Becton making enough inroads to where, that Steen needs to get back out there before he starts, to get to the point where this becomes Becton's job?
Yeah, I think he definitely has to get back, and I think he realizes that. I don't think the door is closed on him, because ultimately I do think there's some issues with playing a 6'8" guy at guard, and I think the Eagles realize that. And then there's the domino effect of, if he's the starting guard, he's not the backup swing tackle. And, at Lane Johnson's age and injury history, you may need somebody. And then if you start kicking out Mekhi Becton in game to tackle, Jeff Stoutland is typically not like to do that. You can even go back to the practice where Tyler got hurt. He put Darian Kennard in at right guard, and it was a little bit of a story for 24 hours, because we're like, why didn't he go to Becton or Hennessy or somebody like that? And it's because it was in practice. He didn't want to create those ripple effects at other positions. Mekhi was working at backup right tackle on that. So he didn't want to move multiple spots, as he typically doesn't want to do. And, if you're a starter, you can't be the backup to the tackles on game day unless you're going to move multiple parts.
Which they don't like to do.
Exactly.
John McMullen, Birds 365, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. All right, so those are some of the battles on the line. We got the right guard spot, as we know. What about, where are we at number 3 wide receiver? Has anybody emerged since camp has opened?
No. In fact, Nick Sirianni and Aaron Moorhead both spoke this week about that competition, and both kind of hinted towards a piecemeal approach. And then all of a sudden, Paris Campbell comes up with a groin injury, so he's been out for the last 2 days, and that's given an opening to John Ross, Britton Covey, and even Johnny Wilson, the rookie 6th-round pick, and they seem to be, talking about that piecemeal approach where you need a traditional slot guy. It might be Covey. If you need a red zone threat, it might be Johnny Wilson. If you need a speed guy to stretch the field to get AJ and Devontae more space underneath, and it might be John Ross, and they might go about it that way and just kind of piecemeal it. But I also think that's a position where you consistently hear that, Howie's keeping a keen eye on elsewhere around the NFL, because if they can get better at that position, they're going to try to get better from outside the building.
All right, so we'll keep an eye on that. Let's stick with the wide receivers, but not about them. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. It seems that both of them have had some high praise for Quinyon Mitchell. So is Mitchell becoming the guy opposite of Darius Slay?
No, not yet. I mean, that's and I asked Vic about that today because, that has been a battle between Isaiah Rodgers and Kelee Ringo. And Quignon's gotten the occasional rep, but very rarely. He spent most of his time mixing in as sort of the backup, and then also when Slay's on a pitch count, he'll take first-team reps at left corner, and also take first-team reps in the slot position. And I'm interested to see when Cooper DeJean comes back, if that changes things, if there's some kind of domino effect, and then he starts to kick outside to right corner opposite Darius Slay. Vic essentially said, you kind of have to see where Cooper is when he comes back. The original timetable was about 3 weeks. We're just over a week. So there's a little bit more time. But he's definitely going to get reps. I mean, they think he's a really good player. So where are those reps going to come from? Generally, it's probably going to be the slot. So if that's the case, you don't need Mitchell to work as much in the slot, and then you can get him kick-started at right corner because, let's face it, that's where they want to go. Mm-hmm. It might not be week 1, but whether it's week 4, whether it's week 8, they want Quinyon Mitchell on the field at outside cornerback at some point. So the quicker you can get to that, the better. But right now it's Rodgers versus Ringo, and I would say the past couple days tell you that Rodgers has taken a lead, at least a slight lead.
All right, interesting, because I was going to follow up with, Ringo, McPherson, Job, Eli Ricks, all these guys who have kind of been in the mix where are they starting to fall off? Are we starting the cream rise to the crop here? Or is there still some of those guys in the mix?
Well, it's a matter of how many do you want to keep, and do you want to risk sending guys, through waivers and try to get them back on the practice squad? They certainly didn't want to do that with Eli Ricks last season. Ultimately, you can't keep everybody. They got a bunch of guys who can play in this league. The numbers look very difficult for Zach McPherson coming off his Achilles injury. With Job, the interesting part of that is he's a really good special teams player. And Michael Clay is going to be pounding the table for him, but he's not nearly as good a corner as Ricks. Last year, how he kind of defaulted to that upside with Eli Ricks. We'll see if he does it again. But it's going to be very tough to cut. They're going to cut 1 or 2 corners that they don't want to.
Right.
And that they are going to be on a risk. And I always talk about waivers, and, you and I talked about this for years and years and years. People generally overrate that. About 40 guys get claimed every year at the big cut down because there's 1,100 that glut on the wire. There's not a significant number, but I do think in a cornerback deficient league, people will have their eyes on that Eagles list, and they will be susceptible to losing a corner or 2 on waivers, depending on what way they want to go. And I don't know if there's a way to stop that. I mean, they're just very deep at the cornerback position.
Yeah, a lot of interesting names when we enter camp. We'll keep an eye on where that all starts to shake out. Friday night, somebody's going to have to play out there, so you'll see some of these guys. Let's go to safety, where C.J. Gardner-Johnson had to leave today. I guess the story would be who took his spot when he left.
James Bradbury, first team again. Yeah, it's interesting. James is out there with the first team. He's playing well. You see it. He's savvy. All the things we talk about. Very smart player, high football IQ. And I warned Howie. I warned him the longer he's here, Vic is going to want to play him. And now he's back on the first team. Now, obviously, CJ, and I'm told it's not serious. And he'll be back, and he'll be the starter, obviously. But it is interesting that Bradbury was out there as the first team starting safety opposite Reed Blankenship. They're kicking that can as far down the road as they potentially can.
Interesting there. All right, linebacker. Nakobe Dean, where does he kind of stand in the depth chart with Devin White, Zach Bond, Jeremiah Trotter, Ben Van Sumeren? A lot of interesting names there. No one that really jumps off the page, but where does that position stand?
I mean, every day. So this was the ACE practice open to reporters this summer. Every day, Devin White and Zach Bond have started and been the first-team linebackers, and then the other guys mix in. Nakobe at one point was increasing pretty dramatically, and even Ben Van Sumeren and Jeremiah Trotter have gotten first-team reps at points. And the only reason Oren Burks hasn't is because he's hurt. So they're trying everybody. They're rotating everybody. Nakobe has been solid when it comes to stopping the run. When it comes to blitzing, he seems to have a knack for that. Obviously, that's not going to be a huge part of Vic Fangio's defensive scheme, but he seems to be pretty good going downhill. The less said about coverage with Nakobe Dean, the better. I mean, it's been bad to the point, Vic was talking today and had to admit, because you can't. Anybody was at the open practice at Lincoln Financial Field. He just got scorched by Kenny Gainwell on a couple of occasions in coverage, and that continues to be a problem. And I don't know if it's a fixable problem, but the one guy that people keep bringing up, Vic and Nick, is Zach Bond, and he made a big play today. And the Eagles tried this misdirection screen with a lot of eyewash and eye candy that people are going to like, in motion, trying to fool the defense, and he sniffed it out. He had Saquon Barkley dead to rights for about a 5-yard loss. So he keeps showing up day in and day out, and he might lock down that job.
Yeah, well, Fangio was talking about his versatility. He said he plans to utilize that, so it sounds like Zach Bond definitively is going to have a role in this defense. And he also gave some perspective on why the inside linebackers are so important. It'll be interesting to see how important they are in this defense.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I mean, they're important, as Vic said, but I don't know if the Eagles have the players to, and that's directly attested to the assets they put into the position. I mean, they gave Devin White a little bit of money, but $3.5 million guaranteed, chance to make $7 million. Zach's got a 1-year essentially deal at the league minimum, but he's got incentives that can bring it up over 3. These are not high, big time investments. And then you talk about Nakobe Dean as the 3rd round pick a couple years ago. Jeremiah Trotter seems to have some instincts. Ben Van Sumeren's undrafted, but very raw coming out of college. I've said it pretty consistently. And if you want to add Oren Burks into the mix whenever he gets healthy, so those are your 6 linebackers. I mean, you can play Devin White and Zach Bond or Ben Van Sumeren and Jeremiah Trotter, and I don't think there's going to be a massive downgrade.
It's like the Singleton kid, right? I mean, when he was out there, he just worked hard. They used him, the year, and he's made it in this league. It's like you can have guys out there that pile up a lot of tackles and do stuff, but doesn't mean you have a strong spot on the field.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean you have a splashy player. Like Vic had mentioned, he went out to the Hall of Fame because the Eagles had the day off, and to see partially Merrill Reese, obviously, but Patrick Willis, one of his old players, was going in, and they don't have a player like that. So it's one of those things where, position.
Yeah.
If you have Roquan Smith or somebody of that nature, or even T.J. Edwards, and the Eagles had him, and people didn't think he could play for some bizarre reason, and he's playing at a really, really high level in Chicago. And they didn't want to pay him $6.5 million.
He made an interesting statement about Milton Williams today, that he actually tried to trade for him. So does that suggest that Milton has a big role coming this year?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know that, so it's interesting that Vic was trying to get him before. But we knew he was going to have a big role just from the, how Vic plays defense. And which you have those three interior players and then the two edge players on his sort of default setting. And with Fletcher Cox retiring, Milton was next up. So, and that's one of the reasons why I think the extension hasn't been worked out, because I've heard, the Eagles wanted to extend him, but he understands he's going to get a bigger opportunity, kind of betting on himself. And we'll see if the Eagles can, and they've done that in the past where they've sort of upped the offer and then maybe get it done anyway. But if you go back to when Dallas Goedert was getting his extension, it was deep into November because he was betting on himself. And I think the same thing is going on with Milton Williams, and he's a good player. It's just a matter of how good he can become. And obviously Vic is high on him because he wanted, as he said, he wanted to trade for him in Miami last year.
Yeah, that was an interesting revelation there. So we'll see if that means more from him. You think, I think he mentioned Hunt today as well. I mean, is there a role for Hunt, the third-round pick, who I kind of felt like an afterthought when they took him?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of just defaulted to the fact, all right, he's a developmental guy. It'll take a year or two, and hopefully it'll click down the road. But, I've always left the door slightly ajar, so to speak, for saying, maybe he's a natural. Maybe he just comes out and he's just got that type of ability, even though, played at Cornell and Houston Baptist, and there's a big, obviously, upgrade in competition level, but certain guys just have it. And I think a lot of it depends on, how the guys in front of them do. And I think a lot of people are concerned about Bryce Huff because he hasn't splashed much at camp. And Vic, the last time he spoke, kind of said he's not ready yet, which set alarms off for people. Everybody's worried about Nolan Smith because he didn't do much as a rookie. Brandon Graham's age, Josh Sweat didn't have a great year. There's question marks about all four of those guys. And, if one is not doing the job, all of a sudden you need that fifth edge rusher. And maybe that can be Jalen Hunt. Maybe that can be. But Nick has also mentioned Patrick Johnson. They have Julian Okwara. So they have some other options as well. I'm still leaning towards him being a red shirt player, so to speak. But I would leave the door open. And we'll see more in the preseason. He's going to play a ton in the preseason. And we'll see if it clicks and he's able to generate some pass rush against, what are going to be backup players.
Well, it'll be interesting, John, to see which players kind of get the snaps in these games. Do you anticipate the starters playing at all Friday night?
Yeah, they might play a little bit, and we'll get hopefully, we probably won't, but we may get a better feel. Nick's going to talk on Wednesday, and he might have the plan put in place. But Vic talked about it today. He said, he thinks guys like it, want it, and, certainly from the defensive perspective, they probably need it a little bit more than maybe the offense does. The problem with the offense of the Eagles is if you got to play the quarterback, you got to play the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And, do you want Lane Johnson out there? Do you want Landon Dickerson, who's already lacerated his toe? He's dealing with a knee injury. Jordan Mailata. Do you want those guys out there? Because they got to be out there if you're playing the quarterback. So I think they could be safer about it offensively. AJ doesn't need reps. Devontae, they don't need them.
Right.
Defensively, they need reps. And even if you think about the stars on defense, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, they're very young players who could use the reps. So it might be as simple as that. They need it more on defense than they need it on offense.
Friday night, listen to the game right here, 97.3 ESPN, the Eagles and the Ravens, preseason game number 1. And, of course, we'll have all the coverage for you here on the Sports Bash. Johnny Mac, we'll talk to you later, bud. It's always good to catch up. And I heard your Zinkoff. You knew who he was.
I did. Well, Vic was staring. I told Josh, Vic was staring right at me when he said that. And I'm like, yeah, I know Zink. I love Dave Zink.
Right. So. Well, I'll tell you, Fangio's got some, he's fun. He's good. He's gruff to listen to. He's going to offer a lot of interesting things, especially if things aren't going so well. We'll have some of that audio coming up later on in the show. But John, we appreciate it as always, pal.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right. There's John. And of course, we'll have John on throughout the week, getting you ready, for Eagles and the Ravens. When we come back, we're going to flip over to LA and the Phillies. They'll get ready for the Dodgers tonight. Tyler Glasnow will pitch tonight against Aaron Nola. Really good pitching matchup. And, of course, the Phillies kind of snapped out of it yesterday. Are they ready to kind of re-kick it into another gear? Harper, Schwarber, the big guns came out yesterday. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, will join us on the other side to kind of give his thoughts on the weekend that was in Seattle, which wasn't a great one, but yesterday may have cleaned it all up. And I know the Phillies bored. That's next. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening.
This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar. I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ Bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and zero weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
With Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
This is a team that just wants to get there. They want to get to October. When October happens, they're going to feel that different energy in the stadium. So I don't know if I'd call it bored, but I think they're certainly anticipating that. But at the same time, they got to realize that their home field is a huge advantage for them. So they need to do whatever they can to lock up home field advantage. So if they are bored, that's some motivation for them to go out there and finish strong in the regular season.
Eric Hosmer, former major leaguer, suggests the Phillies are just bored and that's not a bad thing. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, Red October Philly. You see the stretches of baseball 162 that we talk about a lot. But does the Phillies month of July suggest a team that's just looking forward to October and maybe is bored? Is that a new reason that we're trying to find what's wrong with the Phillies?
That sounds like a little bit of nonsense. I mean, I can go for that so much to the extent of the Oakland series. Like, you have a letdown after the Dodgers. You make your statement. You're looking ahead to the All-Star break. You come out of the break. You're not really dialed in. A lot of guys were actually down in Texas for the All-Star break. Maybe you're not quite locked in yet out of the gate. But, 6 straight series losses. I mean, I think there's a difference there. And yes, they built a big lead. They are kind of running a race in the National League East by themselves right now, because Atlanta just refuses to do what they need to do to get back into all the way. But the Phillies have been so bad here the last, 3 weeks that there's no doubt in the clubhouse that they're not taking any time off and saying, we're all right. They're trying to win games, and I think they're very disappointed in how they've played lately.
Yeah, and yesterday was something that we can get into a little bit, but Friday, let's go back to that. The Tyler Phillips thing, how many times can you keep tapping into the Tyler Phillipses of the world before you have a night like Friday night? And that one just kind of came crashing down. But I guess more of the story is he didn't pitch well. No offense again Friday night. Then on Saturday, you actually have a bullpen game with a 5-run lead. You get it to the guys in the bullpen you want, and they can't get the job done. So when you're losing a game because Hoffman blows it for you, that's a tough pill to swallow. So the two games, Friday night and Saturday, were two really tough ways to lose. Different, but very difficult in the same sense. And you felt, oh my gosh, you got to go out to Seattle and start this thing off with a sweep.
Yeah, I thought Saturday night's loss was maybe the most disappointing for the Phillies in the second half here. They've had a few that they've let get away. One in Minnesota, obviously, a game that they had a 3-0 lead against the Guardians at home to try to win a series 2 Sundays ago. Obviously, last week against the Yankees, the Tuesday night extra innings game, all separately infuriating. But Saturday night, you feel like, all right, look, they jump up 5-0. Seattle can't hit at all. They especially can't hit at home. They're basically hitting 200 as a team at home this season. And Jeff Hoffman, one of the best relievers in the National League, was not good in the 6th inning. And then the Phillies' situational hitting beyond the 6th into the 7th into extra innings was terrible. And that's been something that we've seen a lot of here lately. And it was a horrible loss. I mean, there's just no other way about it. The Phillies probably should have won the series this weekend in Seattle, despite how poorly they played in the opener, and they didn't. And that's what happens when you're not playing good baseball as a team right now. And yesterday was nice, but can't count on Zach Wheeler to go out there and basically be perfect for 7 innings all the time until your offense gets going. And yes, they did score late yesterday and kind of break it open, but we'll see. I don't think that there's any reason to necessarily think quite yet that they've figured it out or that they've magically turned the corner after one win here.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about it's a 1-0 game really in the 8th, and then they kind of busted open to the 6th. But, Bryce Harper showing a little signs of life, that was one thing. The Schwarber day yesterday. So at least, when they've been losing, it's an easier pill to swallow, Bob, isn't it, when you're losing because Harper and Turner and Schwarber are not performing? Because you expect them to perform, just not every single night, but it's easier to say, hey, we're losing games because they're not performing. It's another thing if Harper's going 4 for 5 and Schwarber's going 4 for 5 and you're still losing those games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it goes without saying that they're so important to the Phillies' success, but I think Bryce Harper specifically, when he's not going well, I think he puts a lot of pressure on himself to succeed, and I think he realizes how vital he is to the team's success, and that can be a good thing, right? That self-pressure, that self-accountability, but also I think that there can be a negative impact on that in terms of the guy's beating himself up. He's starting to show frustration. It starts to snowball on him. And I'm not sure that that's great in terms of the overall psyche and how it impacts the rest of the team. I think it creates a very tense environment. It can create a very negative environment too. So here's what I would say. I don't have a lot of good things to say at the moment with where they're at. But I will say that if there's a team that you want to play right now, it might be the Dodgers, and not because the Dodgers have played very well. They're only a game and a half behind the Phillies, I think, for the top record in the National League. This is an important series for the top seed if you care about that. Mm-hmm. Dodgers are in a little bit of a revenge spot here, but I think most people, despite what's happened, would agree that these are the two best teams in the National League. And so for as bad as the Phillies have been for 3 weeks, they get an opportunity to come in here, go out west, go play a hot Dodgers team, and pummel them again. And if they can do that, does that erase the last 3 weeks and some of the bad that we've seen? Probably not, but when the dust settles, you could be sitting there on Thursday morning going, see, we're still the best team in the National League. What else you got? And I think in a way it's kind of nice that they have that opportunity. Now, whether or not they actually take advantage of it and do the things they need to do, that's a whole separate conversation.
Yep. A couple encouraging things, though. Let's look at Brandon Marsh. Give me your thoughts on the Marsh weekend. They let him hit against some lefties. He got 4 hits.
Yeah, showing some signs of life against left-handers. I mean, he was 7 for his first 52 against lefties this season, and he's strung together a couple hits here recently, and maybe that gives him some confidence. Like, Brandon Marsh is never going to be, and it's never going to be an advantageous matchup for him to face a lefty. But if they can get him to a place of respectability against left-handers, I think that that's really big for them. Not feeling like we're going to get a non-competitive at bat every time he faces a left-hander, which is what you really got for about 3 months there. And then they stopped giving him the opportunity. So I think it's a positive. I think you're starting to see some signs of life from Bryson Stott. You obviously are seeing some signs of life from Bryce Harper. Like, there are some things that you can tap into, but you also have to understand that this start out of the gate in the second half has just been so bad that you don't want to, like, I don't know about you, but I'm not really in the mood to give all these guys their roses right now. You gotta go. You gotta build on it and show that you've kind of gotten over that.
Yeah, and, look, this is a long trip, too. I mean, you needed that game yesterday, but it doesn't get any easier, and you're facing Glasnow tonight. Kershaw, a lefty tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what kind of lineup they roll out there with Kershaw, who's not great anymore, but the fact that he's a lefty. And then you would imagine the Dodgers have the pitching advantage again in the final game of the series with Stone pitching against Phillips. After what we saw from Phillips, you wonder if he's starting to run out of gas a little bit. So you could very easily have some positive vibes, and they could go splashing down by the end of Wednesday.
Yeah, I think this one tonight is pretty big. You feel pretty good about Aaron Nola. Obviously, Tyler Glasnow is very good,
yes.
But I think that he is a guy that the Phillies are capable of getting to. I do. He struggled a little bit. He missed some time. He came back. His first 2 starts since his IL stint. He's been all right. He's been pretty good, but I think he's a guy that you can have some success with, so we'll see what they do. But, yeah, I mean, as far as Tyler Phillips goes, I think Taijuan Walker will probably – I think it's possible he starts the game Sunday against Arizona. And then you have Ranger Suarez, who probably comes back during that homestand, that 6-game homestand with the Marlins and Nationals. And so the pitching is getting a little healthier. Then you hold your breath that these guys actually perform, and they're Ranger Suarez specifically is what you expect him to be when he returns. So they're going to have some decisions to make, but is Tyler Phillips still a part of the plan here when these guys get healthier? We'll see. I don't think that you cut him out after one bad start. He's been really good for them. But can you expect Tyler Phillips to resemble anything like the guy that we saw those first 3 starts prior to the blow up on Friday night? Probably not. That's probably unfair to expect that of him.
No doubt. And then, obviously he just didn't have it the other night. And I thought the game the next day, you've got to start Kirkering because of the situation you're in with the lack of pitching. He, pitches 1, then they go to Allard, who gives you 4 good innings. You're not expecting Hoffman, who comes in the 6th inning, to absolutely, when you have a 5-run lead, Bob, and you have Hoffman, Strom, Alvarado, and Estevez available to you in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, you got to win that game.
You absolutely have to win that game, and I think that that's a game they would feel like if you played it 100 times, they'd win it 99, and the one that they didn't went down on Saturday night. But it's just – that's the thing. We always talk about vibes with this team and,
right.
The experience, and that was what was so mind-blowing on Saturday night. It's just like, how do you – after everything that has happened, how do you lose that game set up like this, And – it was one of those games where if it happened and all of these other series losses hadn't occurred, you'd say, tough loss. But that one was really amplified because of just the struggles across the board.
Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, of course, the Phillies tonight. You mentioned the Nola Glasnow matchup there, but can this offense kind of get going? We'll see. Because the one thing is, I don't know, have we seen, do you think the Phillies are ready now to kind of see if Marsh and Stott can play every day? Hey, we gave you a little time off to kind of observe, and now the stretch is here. We're going to give you the opportunity to play every day.
Yeah, I think so. Specifically with Marsh, I mean, he's the guy that's really been, subjected to the platoon. Whether or not they want to call it that or admit that that's what it's been. I think that they are in a situation where this outfield again, Nick Castellanos has been better lately. It wasn't great this past weekend, obviously, but he's been better overall, stretched out over the past 35, 40 games or so. But I think it's pretty obvious that they don't think Johan Rojas right now is an everyday guy. Just look at the lineups. It would tell you that. Mm-hmm. And you talk about Austin Hayes, and they think he's an everyday guy. I mean, he hasn't been very good for them. I mean, he's hitting a shade over 200 since he's been here. He had one pretty big night for them, and other than that, he's been very okay. I mean, I just think that the opportunities are there, where it's like you cycle these guys in, you give them a shot, and it might very well be you get hot at the right time, you're the guy that they're going to ride into the playoffs and maybe during the playoffs. It's just kind of what it looks like right now. So, yeah, I think Brandon Marsh is going to get more opportunities because there's not a solidified, definitive option there. As far as Bryson Stott goes, we'll see. I think it's up to Bryson Stott. Like, if Bryson Stott shows some signs of life here and isn't the least productive second baseman in Major League Baseball for a 2-month stretch here in the next 50 games, then yeah, I think you're going to see Bryson Stott play every game in the postseason. Like, I would be surprised if he was on the bench. So you got to give him the opportunities here going down the stretch.
Yeah, and look, after this, you got Arizona for 4 out there. So you still have 7 games out here. So this thing could be very interesting by the time they make it back home. You do have Miami and Washington. And then that Atlanta and Kansas City, you're right back on the road for Atlanta and Kansas City, Houston, Atlanta. So you got a bunch of games still with teams that are going to be bad. That's the one thing is because you've played so poorly, you have allowed all these teams in the wild card mix to think they have a shot now. And that wild card, almost every team you're facing is in that wild card mix now.
Yeah, I would just say look around the division this past weekend. Mets didn't take advantage of an opportunity against the Angels. The Braves at home against the Marlins couldn't take advantage. I mean, they lost 7-0 yesterday with a series win on the line. And so I think the next 7 games are critically important for the Phillies, and I don't expect them to go 5-2. I don't even know if they'll go 4-3, but if you can kind of tread water and get home, because Atlanta has the Braves this week. Atlanta has the Brewers this week, and then I believe they have Colorado after that. So, like, they get an opportunity during the weekend, but this is a tough matchup here this week. If they can just kind of keep the Braves at arm's length, and then they can get home against the Marlins and the Nationals, that's where I think you really get healthy, you get rolling again, take advantage of some weaker opponents. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're at the final 10 days of August and you still have a 7 or 8 game lead. And I think that people start to say, okay, this team's flawed. I'm not overly confident, but they're still in a pretty good spot here to get to where they want to go.
Well, and Bob, that's the story, really. They did not play well. The Dodgers, the Phillies, the Brewers, and the Braves all had losing records in the month of July. And the Phillies still have the largest lead in the league, in the National League. They're a half game behind where the Orioles and Yankees lead by 6.5 over there. But, I mean, really, as well, as poorly as they played and as bad as everything was, they still have the largest lead divisionally in the National League. So they were able to kind of hold the Braves off because the Braves and Mets could have made some big inroads last month. They made a little bit. I think it got it as big as 10, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, to me, it's like, what do you want to see against these two teams this week? Because we all know what's happened here. So what do you see when you look ahead? You see 3 games against the Dodgers. It's a tough spot. You know, they'll get back Freddie Freeman, who had missed some time. He had a family issue. His son had been ill. He's expected to play in this series. You'll get a good shot from the Dodgers this week. And then, you know, how do you want to set up the games this weekend in Arizona? Is this a revenge spot for the Phillies against the – I don't think so. But you'll hear like the last time they were here in the NLCS, we all know what happened, all that stuff. I just think that the Phillies have to show up and play a better brand of baseball. At the end of the day, Mike, like if they go 3 or 4 versus 3 and 4 versus, I don't know, 5 and 2 or 4 and 3. I don't know if it really matters. You need to see them start playing better baseball. You need to see better efforts out of your main guys in the bullpen. You need to see better at bats. You know, like they just have to play better. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yep, that and, you know, obviously, by the way, the Dodgers and the Phillies are still the 2 teams with the shortest odds to win the World Series. So as much as they've had their problems, they are still probably the 2 best teams in baseball. You've got Baltimore with pitching problems. Their bullpen is Soto, Dominguez, Kimbrel at times, pitching in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning for them. The Yankees have problems. A lot of flawed teams. The Phillies just trying to get out of it. They'll be in L.A. tonight against the Dodgers, and we'll have more for you tomorrow here on the Sports Bash. All right, Bob Wankel, good to see you, buddy.
All right, talk to you, man.
All right, that's Bob. Of course, he'll be back on Friday when the Phillies are in Arizona against the Diamondbacks, and we'll take a look at that. Phillies lineup will not be out by the time the show is over, but that is brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage, located in Rio Grande. Moving's a breeze with Clark's Moving and Storage. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. And, of course, use the hashtag SBLive to find us. And coming up in 10 minutes from now, we'll talk to Jeff Mosher for Football at 4. What are some of the things he's hearing and seeing after the weekend up in NovaCare? Plus, the pads were on today at practice. Some of the stories, some guys got hurt, some guys stepped in. That's coming up in 10 minutes. Football at 4 with Jeff Mosher on the Sports Bash.
This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar.
I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ Bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and zero weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
3:54 Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN this hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call 609-390-3907 or visit them online at broadlees.net. So Jeff Mosher is going to join us for today's Football at 4. You know what's funny? So we were at Charlie's the other day for our Happy Hour Friday. The amount of people, Josh, that tell me they listen to Football at 4 every day. Like, that's their thing, right? So the Football at 4 obviously kind of has its own little group of people that love that Football at 4.
Sure.
So Mosher and I were talking about that. Was it Mosher and I talking about this the other day? About how quickly this summer feels like it's rock and rolling through, where the football, no, it was you and me. We were talking about, there's like that time in the summer where you're like, the football is really like quiet. It never got quiet. It feels like the football never got quiet.
The football seemed like it was a subject every single day almost.
It's unbelievable that I can't believe the Eagles play Friday night.
It's wild.
It's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. By the way, August 23rd, Happy Hour Friday brings us to Vagabond EHT. We'll be out at Vagabond EHT, Bud Light Specials, the Sports Bash Live, celebrating 15 years all summer long. We're taking the next 2 weeks off, but we'll be back August 23rd at Vagabond EHT. So stop out, make plans to see us at Vagabond EHT on Ocean Heights Avenue in Egg Harbor Township on Friday, August 23rd.
Jersey 97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. It's the fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. And, of course, Football at 4 right now with Jeff Mosher on a Mosher Monday as we get ready for the Eagles, as they get ready for the Baltimore Ravens. And Jeff Mosher joins us now for this edition of Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Moshe, buddy? How are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you? Another dog day of summer, right?
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's a little soupy outside there today. But, man, I tell you, we were just talking about this before you jumped on. You know, the fact that the Eagles play Friday night, I cannot believe how fast this all season seemingly went. The fact that they have a game, and now we got, 8 days of practice. Storylines are starting to emerge. And I'll tell you what, I want to get your take on this, because for years we have talked about defensive coordinators here who the fans just did not like, even though their defenses were productive. You had Jim Schwartz, who had that wide 9. People didn't like that, even though they went to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. You had Jonathan Gannon, whose defense got them to a Super Bowl, but people didn't like the style. It's personality over performance a lot of times in Philadelphia. Vic Fangio's personality, it might make people forget that they're not going to like his style of defense.
Yeah, I mean, I still think, at the end of the day, Mike, performance will rule the roost. There were times when Jim Schwartz was liked by Eagles fans. It was just those occasions where they had some tough losses. They had some given up, there were times they gave up some big yardage and that they shouldn't have, like the Super Bowl, for example. But yeah, I think Vic's personality and his willingness to be even more honest than Jim Schwartz was about personnel, about players and things like that, I think appeal to the Eagle fan who really does think of the Buddy Ryan, the Jim Johnson, the coach who's got the gumption to really call players out, because that's what fans like when guys get called out.
No doubt about it. And it seems that he has started already with certain things. Obviously, he has made, last week it was Huff. Doesn't seem that he was all that high on Dean so far. So he has certainly made it known about some of the things that have not made him happy. So let's look at that defensive side of the ball and start with the linebackers. Nakobe Dean, Zach Baun, Jeremiah Trotter. What do we think the linebacking core is going to look like as this camp kind of materializes here?
Yeah, Mike, there's no question this is the most fluid position. This reminds me of safety last year, where you had so many different types of players. You had Justin Evans, right, who they brought in, had that injury history, was mostly a corner, nickel corner. They were going to experiment with him at safety and moved him there. And then you kind of look at Zach Baun, mostly an outside rusher, special teamer in New Orleans. Well, they're moving him to inside linebacker, giving him a shot. If you looked at safety last year, they brought Terrell Edmonds in. Fans kind of got excited because he was a 5-year starter on the Steelers. He was a former first-round pick. Well, look, they brought in Devin White, right, a 4 to 5 year starter for the Bucs, former first-round pick, won a Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, what you really have is a lot of players who do some things well and do some things poorly, and that's why Vic Fangio is being honest about the position, and that's why it's in flux now. And it's not a surprise to me, Mike. This is something we talked about. Andrew DiCecco and I did the podcast that came out this morning. Andrew's been at every single practice. Not a surprise to me that Jeremiah Trotter is someone that we've heard has had good practices, a string of good practices lately, and is starting to get more run on the first and second teams. Because if you look at all the inside linebackers they have, Baun's never really played the position before. Dean was hurt all last year, and as you just mentioned, he's better as a blitzer. That's what they used him as in college, a third down pass rusher, more so than a coverage linebacker. So he's decent against the run too, but he needs good help up front like he had at Georgia. And Devin White is a guy who has great athleticism, but fell out of favor in Tampa Bay because of freelancing and not always being in the right spot. And we were told that he had a difficult practice the other night, Thursday night at the open scrimmage. But Trotter is he doesn't have all of those great athletic traits that Baun and White have, and he doesn't have the pedigree that Nakobe Dean has. But Greg Cosell told us that he thought Trotter Jr.'s tape was better than Nakobe Dean's college tape. And here's a guy who may not have all those great athletic traits, but he understands how to play that position maybe better than anyone, or as much as Nakobe Dean, because they're lifers, right, at that position. And for them, it's not about for him, it's not about using his great athletic traits as it might be for Devin White. It's about having the intellect to play that spot, knowing where to be, knowing when you're dropping, where to be when you're dropping, knowing how to get downhill, stopping the run and getting around offensive linemen. Because A, his dad is Jeremiah Trotter, and he had an early start, and B, that's how he grew up as an inside linebacker and played it at the highest of levels at Clemson. So it doesn't surprise me at all, Mike, that he's etching his name into the group. But I think when it's all said and done, we got a lot of time here, but I imagine what you're going to wind up seeing is different linebackers in different packages, so that you can use all of their strengths to the best ability and try to minimize their weaknesses. So if you're using a blitz package, you may not have Jeremiah Trotter on the field. You may have your Nakobe Deans and Devin Whites, right, or Zach Bonds. But if you're in more of a coverage, you may be in dime and just want to use one linebacker, and maybe that's Nakobe Dean. Maybe it's Devin White. Maybe it's in nickel. Maybe you've got Trotter because it's a pass or run. You're not sure, and you want your smartest guy out there, or your most football intelligent guy out there at that position. So I think we're going to have to redefine, like, quote unquote starting linebacker, because I feel like we're headed toward having just a bunch of guys playing and using them in different roles.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because that's the linebacker spot, and you wonder, is that going to be the same situation at corner, or do we think we're going to get a more defined corner depth chart?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really curious to see as camp goes, does Quinyon Mitchell continue to get these first-team nickelback reps? Does the outside corner get settled, or does it continue to be Ringo versus Rogers for the rest of the way, or does Quinyon get a chance to elbow his way into that conversation? I think at the end of the day, when you're a coach, Mike, you want to put your best personnel in the best position to succeed for your overall defense. It's not always about one spot or one guy. If you put Quinyon Mitchell at nickel corner because you think he's handling it really well, that opens up the other outside corner spot opposite Slay for either a Rogers or a Ringo. Rogers runs a 4-2-2, something like that. He's crazy fast, but he's short. So that's why he's splitting it with Ringo, who's taller and more physical, not nearly as fast and fluid-hipped as Rogers, right? If you put Quinyon Mitchell on the outside, you're probably going to not play Ringo or Rogers in the slot because neither of them are very experienced there, and you're going back to the Avonte Maddox or the Tyler Hall you're keeping somebody else that might not be as good overall as a player as what you would have if you had Mitchell in the slot and Rogers on the outside or Ringo on the outside. I feel like you're more dynamic, you're faster, and you're more athletic if you're able to get Quinyon Mitchell and either Rogers or Ringo on the field compared to having Quinyon Mitchell and Avonte Maddox or Tyler Hall or some other nickelback on the field, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tyler Hall. It's funny. It's almost like his name hasn't been mentioned at all. There's just so many guys down there, and it's funny, when training camp, or when we got to training camp, it was Ringo and Ricks and Job, and, what's happening with all these guys. Tyler Hall's name, I think you saying it there was the first time I've heard it since camp opened.
Yeah, I mean, he's mostly ran with the second and third teams. I believe in today's observations done by Andrew DeCecco, there were a couple of notes on Tyler Hall. It's not that he's not doing anything. It's just that right now, I mean, put yourself in Vic Fangio's shoes. You know that even though you weren't the coordinator for the defense
and by the way, Mosh, not to interrupt, it doesn't help that
Mm-hmm.
you can't get Cooper DeJean out there either.
Of course. That does not help. And you know that last year you had one of the slowest, most undynamic secondaries in the NFL. So naturally, a guy like Tyler Hall, who's been around the block, he knows what he's doing. You kind of know what you're getting with Tyler Hall. I think Vic Fangio really needs to know and learn quickly what he has in this collaboration of young defensive cornerbacks that the Eagles have been piling up over the last 2 years, to see if they can get on the field first and be smart and be in the right spots and understand the defense and be dynamic before you're going to give opportunities to, veterans and journeymen, things like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, do they rather, Hall might be the guy who might be more ready now, but do they want to risk losing one of those younger guys?
Exactly. I mean, they've got to find out what they have. And hey, look, first game is Friday against the Ravens. That'll be a really nice test. The Ravens are. Do they still have that streak going? I think I got broke last year, right? The preseason winning streak.
I think it did. I think they lost last year. Yeah.
Well, they're going to be hungry to start a new one. But no, the point is they're always well coached and well prepared, and they always bring it in the preseason. So it doesn't matter who they put out there. They'll be well coached and well schemed.
Jeff Mosher, Football at 4. Taking a look at the Eagles, we're looking a lot of things on that defensive side of the ball. Today, Vic Fangio brought up Jalix Hunt, the 3rd-round pick, and I guess most people just figured this would be like a redshirt year for him. He also brought up Milton Williams. He said he tried to trade for him when he was in Miami last year. So that kind of perked me up a little bit of, does he have a bigger role in mind for Milton Williams than maybe we thought? And is there a role, if Jalix Hunt has a role, you're thinking, what could that possibly be? We're trying to figure out how Nolan Smith is going to have a bigger role. You've already got Huff. You've got Sweat. So what do you make of those two guys, Milton Williams and Jalix Hunt?
Yeah, it's funny. Milton's, I don't want to say he's had a quiet camp. It's just we haven't talked about him a whole lot until Vic dropped that nugget yesterday. But he's entrenched. I mean, he's a starter. I mean, really the story at D tackle this camp is the second-year player, Moro Ojomo, really, pushing to try to get more playing time. But that's going to be tough when you've got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams all in your way. But I'm sure they'll figure out a way to get that. They like to rotate, and I'm sure they will figure out a way to get Moro Ojomo on the field. And I think, this is a big year for Milton Williams because it's the 4th year on his 4-year deal. Now, Howie could have said last year at this time, you know what, if I get something good, I will trade him because I don't foresee giving him a contract extension because I already have this Davis Carter and a kid like Moro Ojomo coming up, but he didn't. So that tells you he likes Milton Williams. We know the coaching staff likes Milton Williams, and Milton Williams is, I'm sure, motivated to want to get himself either an extension or a really nice free agent deal.
Yeah, that one was kind of interesting today, and Vic Fangio kind of singling those guys out. He singled a lot of guys out today, and one Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who had to leave the field, but it was James Bradbury who got the first-team reps when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Do you think it's becoming more apparent that Bradbury will have a role in some capacity?
Well, let me flip this question around to you.
All right.
If C.J. Gardner-Johnson leaves practice with an injury, the Eagles need to put somebody next to Reed Blankenship. Who's next? If not James Bradbury.
Well, right now, right, because Sidney Brown's not even out there. I mean, I guess you could look at Avonte Maddox. So he has played some safety, but yeah, there's not a lot of options. That's for sure.
Right. Obviously, it's again the only way I see James Bradbury being able to make this team is at that price tag. Is being a starter. So, yeah, you got an opportunity now to see can he be a starting safety with C.J. Gardner-Johnson out? How does he look? So naturally, you're going to give him that shot. He ain't making the team as a 4th safety. That's not going to happen at that price tag. So here's the opportunity now with C.J. Gardner-Johnson out, and hopefully that's not too bad. We'll find out more tomorrow for James to show what he can do.
All right, that was something that happened today as well. Haven't heard a whole heck of a lot about the two big men in the middle, Carter and Jordan Davis. There were 8 days in, and my question really revolves around the impact that those two guys, that position has in this particular defense.
Yeah, I mean, remember, this today was just the 3rd padded practice. If I'm not mistaken, there was the link one and one 2 days before that. So, but Jalen Carter has looked really good. I've been, as I understand it, in camp. I know he's gotten the best of a couple of different interior offensive linemen at times. Jordan Davis is interesting, and Andrew and I talked about this on today's pod. They're practicing for 4 straight days. It was pretty hot today, and I know the temperature is going to cool down a little bit the middle of the week, right? But I'm really curious to see, and Andrew will be the one to really chronicle it. What is he like on Wednesday, the 4th? Because that's 4 straight days. We already know he's lost the weight. We already know, the pads have come out, and he's been practicing, and he's been doing his thing. But, it's all about conditioning more than what your weight and size is. So let's see how he does here as the week goes on. And because to me, this is a very important week because the Eagles are having in the midst of 4 straight practices, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? So let's see how he is on Wednesday on that fourth day of 4, because last week was sort of like training camp light. They had 3 days off in a 4-day span, with the only practice being the Thursday one. So I thought that was a little light for them. Now it gets more intense.
Yeah. Do you anticipate that a lot of guys will play Friday night?
I do not. Well, not a lot of first-teamers.
Right. No, obviously, yes. You need at least 22 guys out there, or if not more. But some of the battles, though, because there are a lot of players that seemingly are, kind of battling for spots here who have some status.
Tight end, Mike. Tight end, third wide receiver. And, I don't know if this is an uh-oh moment yet, but Paris Campbell now has a groin injury. He was not at practice yesterday. I think he left yesterday and wasn't at practice today. You're already seeing Johnny Wilson, the rookie, 6'7" rookie, getting inside and outside reps. And Jalen Hurts has talked about him. The coaching staff has talked about him. So he's a guy that you're going to probably see jockeying with Britton Covey, who's also made some really impressive catches from the slot. I mean, this is, to me, what you're watching on Friday night is the Coveys, the Johnny Wilsons. You're watching the backup tight ends because E.J. Jenkins has been playing well. And while it looks right now like Goddard and Calcaterra, your number 1 and number 2, C.J. Uzomah should be your 3 because he's one of the few guys who can block, but I don't know how much C.J. Uzomah has left. That was a big question going into camp. If E.J. Jenkins or Albert Okwuegbunam, I just butchered that last, Alberto, can either one of those two can prove.
It was a good effort. It was a good effort.
I should have said Alberto. I really should have. But, Andrew's been telling us, and I'm sure with you, that E.J. Jenkins is a guy who's really making some plays. Tanner McKee is connecting with him, and he's 260. So 250, 260, I think 250. I mean, if he can block some and the Eagles are comfortable with it, you may see him elbow his way onto the 53-man over a guy like Uzomah. It's not likely given the money they gave CJ, but hey, anything can happen there.
Where are you at the right guard spot? Are you ready to kind of say, I think this is going to be Becton's job?
I am low in the pecking order, Mike. I haven't even gotten any right guard reps yet, but maybe tomorrow. No, I'm concerned about it. So I've been told that Mekhi Becton has looked okay. For a guy trying to play the position for the first time, some good reps and some not great reps. Nothing terrible, nothing great. Obviously, Tyler Steen returned to practice today, limited. So hope he gets back into full practice either tomorrow or the next day, and gets out there. But, it's amazing to me that Brett Toth is really kind of climbing this ladder here. They have other guys that you thought might get right guard snaps, like Matt Sharping, who's been in the league for 4 or 5 years, has playoff experience, right? You got Darian Kennard, they got from the Chiefs last year. I was told that the Chiefs thought he was a better guard than a tackle, so you thought he could get in line. But Brett Toth, who's been with the team like on and off and on and off and on and off, and then through the injury and all, has been playing center, guard, and can play and has played tackle for them in the past. And he got right up in there when there was some injuries the last few days. So he'll be another one to kind of watch and see if he can elbow his way into that conversation. But yeah, I mean, right now, right guard looks like a big question mark.
Well, yeah, and Steen, not being in there, you wonder, hey, the more and more that he keeps giving Becton reps, how much more does that, make it more difficult for him to get back out there? So one will, you wonder, I would imagine Becton's going to have to play in games at that. You got to play him at live speed to see if he can handle that position there, which would be, it'd be interesting to see how he handles it. That's a big man playing guard, but if they can get him out there and get a successful player, when he's been healthy, he's been very good. His problem has been injuries.
No doubt about it. And, they drafted the kid out of Michigan, Trevor Keegan, who's gotten some first-team reps when Dickerson was out and when Becton was playing right guard. And Keegan is a mauler. I mean, he's like your vintage, John Runyon-esque type lineman, except an interior lineman. But I think he's only a left guard. I don't think he's had right guard reps in either college or yet at the NFL. He would be someone you'd want to say, hey, let's take a look at him. But Toth was getting those snaps instead. So I guess Keegan is really just a left guard only player at this moment.
All right. A lot there. Will Shipley, people seem to like what they're seeing from him. We'll get to see him on Friday night, I would imagine. That spot, as you kind of mentioned, the third wide receivers, Johnny Wilson keeps getting the buzz. Not so much for Ainias Wilson, who has a little bit of the drops we keep hearing there. So we'll see how that. Ainias Smith, excuse me. Johnny Wilson, Ainias Smith. Those Smith and Wilson, the most, normal names you can come up with. Smith and Wilson. Those two guys there. We'll see how they get out there Friday night. So that'll be some of the offensive battles to kind of watch. What are you hearing about the backup quarterback spot?
Oh, Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup quarterback. The reason Tanner McKee is going to get some second-team reps here, we talked about this also on the pod, is he's not a camp body. They were impressed with him last year, kept him on the 53. They want to develop him. He could be your future backup, and there are so few reps in a training camp practice for anybody on the third string, fourth string, like Will Grier, that you don't get enough out of it. But if this guy's more than a camp body to you and you want to give him a little bit of time and experience with a better surrounding cast, then you got to give him a couple of second-team reps here and there, which is what he's been getting.
All right, Mosher's back on Wednesday, and we'll take a look closer at who might do some damage in that game on Friday night. Who can win jobs? 3 preseason games, remember, and it all starts Friday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Jeff, appreciate it, bud.
Take care, Mike.
All right, Mosher's here, and, of course, football at 4 on the Sports Bash as we get you ready for the Eagles season. We'll continue to look at the Birds throughout the week, get you ready for Friday night as the Birds are back right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's going to be a Friday night game, which is good because their opening game this year is on a Friday night. So you got the Friday night game right here, and then the rest of their preseason is interesting because they play Friday, Thursday, and then a Saturday afternoon for the preseason. I don't know if I ever remember the Eagles playing a Saturday afternoon preseason game. I don't remember that ever happening. It's always Thursday night, generally. Maybe a Friday here and there. A Saturday at 1 o'clock, I think, is the last preseason game. I do not remember that happening. Sports Bash coming up. Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is in the house. He'll give us his Nuggets for today, what's on his mind. Plus, in the 5 o'clock hour here from Vic Fangio, what he had to say today. And the Big 3. That's all still to come on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
We have the perfect sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
4:30 on the Sports Bash, live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Time for another edition of Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is the host of the Shift podcast, and he's the producer of The Locker Room, weekends on 97.3 ESPN. He joins us each day at this time to give us some nuggets. The nuggets today, we'll see what he's got from a weekend that was not a great weekend. But I did tell Nick Earnshaw not to expect much out of Tyler Phillips, and that happened on Friday night. And the Phillies lost 2 out of 3, and was not a great weekend for the Phils, but it did get a little better yesterday, Nick Earnshaw.
Yes. you were totally right about, Friday, about Tyler Phillips. He didn't show up. It's all right. It's all right. They won yesterday. They're back in the win column finally after losing 6 straight games. They get a tough series tonight against the Dodgers. So it's going to be fun, but you were right. I'll give you credit. You did say coming off the complete game shutout, he wasn't going to have a good night, and you were correct. I'll give you that. I'll give you credit. I'll give.
Yep. Don't expect guys like that to be able to be consistent. No. That's the problem. When you are yearning for consistency from journeyman players, you are bound to be disappointed.
Yes. And listen, I was trying to be a beacon of positivity on Friday. The Phillies have been losing a lot of games lately, just got swept by the Yankees. Tyler Phillips, he had won all the games since they've come back from the All-Star break, the last 3. So I was like, let's be a beacon of positivity here. And that blew up right
Hey,
now.
Listen, I like to be positive as well, but I also like to be right. And I knew I would be wrong if I was positive in that situation.
I know. I was too leaning too much on the positive side on Friday with Tyler Phillips. But there were some positive things out of yesterday's game, Mike. Nugget number 1, little 8th inning spark for the Philadelphia Phillies. Had 3 home runs from Stotty, Harper, and Alec Bohm in the 8th inning. It went 6-0. Wheeler, 8 innings yesterday, shutout baseball, only giving up 2 hits, 9 strikeouts as well. The Marlins also beat the Braves down in Atlanta. You like to see that too. So the Phillies 8th inning spark. I think this could be, hopefully, I'm going back to my positivity here, Mike. The spark that they needed offensively from Harper, from Bohm, from Stott, Real Muto driving in a run as well. They've been scoring some runs the last couple of games. Yesterday, that 8th inning really sparked them. That could be what gets them back on the right track, gives them a little bit of confidence here.
Yeah, it's because this team has been struggling because their best players have not been there. And all of a sudden yesterday, all the guys that you've been counting on who have been letting you down, they're the ones. It's different if, like, all of a sudden it's Austin Hayes and, Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott. Right, like guys that you're like, all right, it's the guys that you've been waiting for finally kind of burst out late in that game, and you hope that carries over. Now, you're only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. If Glasnow comes out and shuts you down tonight, you're back to square one. But it looked like, that catch that Marsh made, they didn't even know the ball dropped right into his glove. And then after that, everything just starts, the floodgates open up. Maybe that was the first step. Look, Eric Hosmer, we've been playing that audio throughout the day. He suggested the Phillies are just kind of bored, like a team that has been to the playoffs, went to the World Series, that sometimes in the dog days of summer, you're just looking forward to October baseball, and it's hard to kind of crank it up. And maybe that's the case. But maybe now that it's August, you start to crank it up a little bit more, because we saw the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Braves, and the Brewers all finished with losing records in the month of July. So maybe those division winners, or leaders, I should say, just kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a long season, 162 games. That's why they call it the dog days of July and August, right? The dog days of summer. That's why that is the name of that, because it's tough to get through the stretch. It's hot out. It's a long season. You're right in the middle of it. You're just kind of waiting to get to October. You take your foot off the gas a little bit. Oh, you might lose some ground in the division as well, but the Marlins help you out there too. And we got to remember, I mentioned last week, this is Bryce Harper's. This is like a June Schwarber type of event for Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper usually has pretty good months of August. He hits a lot of home runs this month. His average is really good. It's over 300 during the month of August. So he had 3 hits yesterday. Schwarber looked like June Schwarber, had 3 hits as well. So that's why I'm thinking maybe this was the spark plug they needed. They finally get off the ground. Wheeler has a really good start. And you get the offense going a little bit late in the game. Now, they did it by the long ball. You're not going to be able to do that every night. We know sometimes this team lives and dies by the home run. That was the case yesterday, 6-0, but they got a good pitching performance out of Wheeler. Can they get another one tonight? That'll be the question. But heading into this series against the Dodgers, I mean, you're not going to have the pitching issues as much as you did the first time you saw the Dodgers, right? Like now you've lost 13-17 since that Dodgers series as well. They have some guys coming back. Glasnow will pitch in this series. Kershaw and Stone, I believe, are the 3 starting pitchers for the Dodgers in this 3-game set that they have going on starting tonight. But yeah, I think they can get it rolling here. If they can get, the offense going, it doesn't have to be by the long ball. Sometimes, you're going to need some base hits. You're going to have to play a little bit of small ball. But yesterday, they lived and died by the home run. Can they do it again tonight? Yeah, we'll see. But, maybe that was a spark plug they needed.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Glasnow's tough, man. He's very tough. Yep. And, of course, Kershaw's a lefty, so we'll see how that plays in. If the Phillies continue to give Marsh at bats against lefty. He has 4 hits in a row now against left-handed pitching. We'll see if the Stott is also in the lineup. But this is a big series because if you want home field advantage, you got to start to get some separation from the Dodgers. If you can win this series, it kind of opens up. They're a game up on the Dodgers in the win column right now. So big one starting tonight. Hey, these are the fun ones. Out west, though, 10-10. You going to make it?
I will definitely make at least half of it. You know me, I fall asleep pretty early, but I will stay up for the Phils. I'll probably go to the gym, get a workout in tonight, and then I'll probably sit down and watch the Phillies as I fall asleep. So that's my plan. I'm going to try and stay up all night. If it goes in extras, I'm going to have trouble. Now, are you going to make every single pitch, every single inning tonight, Mike? How do you feel about these 10 o'clock West Coast games?
Back in the day, I used to like them. Now, not so much. I don't think I'm going to make it to the end of this game tonight. Although I will get to the beginning. I got practice tonight, so I missed the beginning, which means I get there for the start of the game, so I like that. Normally, these 10-10, the 9:30 starts aren't as bad. The 10-10 ones are rough, man.
Yeah, the 9:30s I can handle. I'm fine. I'll make it through the whole thing. But the 10-10s, 10-15s, it's like, it's going to be tough because usually I'm out by like 11:30. Like the 6:40 starts for me have been such a blessing. I can enjoy myself, watch the game, done by like 9:30, have still a couple hours left in the night. The 10 o'clock start, it's like, we're just starting to watch the game. Like the 6:40, fantastic. But you got the West Coast time. I'm gonna attempt to make it. Now, I'm gonna set the over-under for you. How many games do you make it this week past 10 o'clock? Watch the whole thing.
Well, I will. Okay, so I'm off Thursday. So the Wednesday game, what time is that?
Let me check.
Is that like an afternoon?
That could be an afternoon game. But remember, they're going to Arizona after that.
Right, but it might be like a 4 o'clock. That could be like a 4 o'clock game. So
they're
I'll be
all 10-10.
All of
10-10.
them. Oh, well.
Every single one.
I am off on Thursday, so I imagine I could probably hang in there a little later on the Thursday game. It's what are the Arizona? That's a weird time zone. So you're at the 9 o'clock, right? Yeah. So now, so next week I'll be at the World Series next week, so it's going to be tough to. We play at 7 o'clock on Saturday. Sunday, we have an off day. Monday and Tuesday, we have afternoon games. So, yeah, I'll probably be able to hang in there.
All right. I'm going to set mine.
We do a lot of, we're night owls. In those World Series, we do a lot of scouting, so we're up late.
That's true. The work week for me this week is going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I'm going to get at least get one full game in. I know I'm going to get at least one full Phillies-Dodgers game in from the start to finish. And, maybe I'll get two. But there's going to be one where I'm just out. I'm going to just totally miss it. I'll have to catch up in the morning again. Because they will replay it in the morning. If you wake up early enough, I'm an early riser. I'm more of an early riser than a night owl. So I can catch the replay and catch the end in the morning.
I am an early riser. I'm not watching the replay, though.
What do you mean you're not going to watch the replay?
I can't do it. Once I know the answer to the question, I can't watch it. Once I know what happens, I'm out. I'm not the guy who DVRs the game. If it's not in real time, I'm out.
I hear you. You know what I did during the Sixers series when they were playing the Knicks? I was doing a game for ESPN Plus, doing college softball and doing some play-by-play, but it was during the same time as Sixers Knicks. I had to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And I had to record the entire game. I get home. I said, nobody tell me what happened in the Sixers-Knicks game. I watched the whole thing. The Knicks won that game. I think it was like game 4 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't do that. It's like the Seinfeld episode. There was an episode where Jerry answers the phone. He's like, hey, I VCR the Met game. Don't tell me what happened.
Yeah, and it was like that movie with Jimmy Fallon as well, Fever Pitch, when he was like at dinner with the girlfriend, with the parents, and someone was talking about the game behind him, watching it on their phone, or someone said something. I think someone said something behind him, and he had to go la 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 or whatever, and she had to hold his ears.
Yep, no doubt. But nope, if I know the answer, I know the game, I can't go back and watch it.
I can watch it if I will watch the highlights, but sometimes I'll catch the end just to see what I missed. That's what I'll do.
All right. Well, good for you.
All right. Moving on. Nugget number 2. I don't know if you saw this today, Mike, but Jalen Hurts is the front man for flag football in the Olympics in 2028. Did you see that he was in the promotional video because flag football is coming to the Olympics in LA in 2028? Did you see that?
I saw that. Yes, I did see him in the video, but I didn't take the time to watch it or see what it was for. I didn't realize it was for flag football. I was wondering why he was lighting the torch there.
Yeah. So because flag football is coming to the Olympics in 2028, it's in America. Jalen Hurts is now the front man for it. He's the one promoting it, which is funny. But I wanted to ask you this question based upon that. Which would you rather watch? Because Team USA in 3v3 basketball, a sport that you love to watch, it got eliminated. USA got eliminated just recently. Jimmer Fredette was on that team. Would you rather watch the 3-on-3 basketball?
Whoa. I haven't watched any 3-on-3 basketball.
That's what I mean. You don't like it.
No, I thought you said a sport that I like.
I was being a little sarcastic. I was being a little sarcastic.
I was going to say, I'm not watching any. I haven't seen any of the 3-on-3 basketball.
Yeah, USA got eliminated. So I want to ask you, would you rather watch the 3-on-3 basketball or flag football?
Neither.
Yeah, you have to
flag football to me is useless. I have zero interest in flag football.
So do you think this is going to work? Because
they need to come up with a better. They need something better than the flags. The flag thing it's weak sauce. The flag.
Should they make it two-hand touch?
That's better. I mean, it's better than the flags. I mean, you got people bouncing all over the place. You know, the flag thing is. I don't like it.
If you had to pick one, though, you're just back against the wall. You have to watch one or the other.
I'll do 3-on-3. I think flag football is the least entertaining thing, period. You know, I used to play years ago. I played in a rough touch league.
Okay.
It was a rough touch, and you just bang, you can kind of rough touch. But that to me is way better than the flag. You got people in the flag, they're running around in circles, they're doing dances. I mean, it's not good. Flag football is not good.
If you get guys like Tyreek Hill, our buddy Dave Clement, go fast guys like that, it's not going to be entertaining to you at all?
No. I have zero interest in watching flag football.
All right. Not even if Jalen Hurts is the quarterback of the USA flag football team in L.A. 2028. You're not tuned in?
No. I'm not watching him in the Pro Bowl. I'm not watching him in the I'm not watching the flag football Pro Bowl game. I don't like the concept of the flag football at all.
All right. So you'll be in for cross-country equestrian like I was the other day. That's what you'll be tuned in for.
Yeah.
Over the flag football.
Yeah, I'm definitely out on flag football. 3-on-3 basketball. You know, they're making the rules. I was reading something like that. Apparently the FIBA, the Olympic Committee doesn't want the Americans to be good at it, so they've made the rules so they can't use NBA players or something to that effect.
Yeah, NFL players. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this kind of all shakes out. I know they're doing it in the Pro Bowl now. Now it's coming to the Olympics. I wonder how many NFL players are actually going to do it. Tyreek Hill's going to be a little bit older than. I know I expressed interest in doing it before, so we'll see how that all shakes out. But I want to move along. One more nugget for you. There was a forgotten Sixer here. He posted a goodbye to the city of Philadelphia. Now, I don't know if you saw this too, Mike. Around 2:30 today, Furkan Korkmaz, former 76er, had the longest trade request in the history of trade requests. Finally got traded. It took him forever to say goodbye to the city of Philadelphia. He posted it on X as well as Instagram. Thank you, Philadelphia, for his time here. Now, do you think this is Furkan kind of getting back at the Sixers in a sense? Because he took him forever to get traded. He requested a trade years ago. Finally happened. And then this year, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, on a random Monday afternoon in August, he sends a goodbye to Philadelphia. I mean, it feels like a little bit of a shot.
Where's he going?
I don't know. I don't know where he's at. He's just saying thank you to the city. That's all he's doing.
Well, put it this way. For Furkan, he requested a trade, and yet nobody called the Sixers to try to pick him up. I mean, they were doing him a favor. They were doing him a favor keeping him on the roster. He should have been thankful, and it seems that he was. I don't know where he even went. I don't think he's in the NBA. I think he signed overseas.
I think he went to the Euro League.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
he went to the Euro League.
Yeah, maybe he's a little busy this summer and just got around to it.
He finally got around to it today. That's it.
Yep. That's what I mean. Look, Korkmaz, it's one of those guys that every now and then he'd have this game and you're thinking hey, how come? But, he was, not a great defensive player, very streaky shooter, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was very odd to see on my feed Furkan Korkmaz, goodbye city of Philadelphia and thank you. It was very odd on a Monday afternoon after being traded last year, now going to the Euro League. Very interesting. All right, final nugget of the day, 4-pack for you. Vic Fangio. He had some crazy comments. I know you guys talked about it at some point today. He mentioned an interesting little nugget about Milton Williams, how they tried trading for him down in Miami and how he would not give up Milton Williams. Now, what would have happened if Milton Williams didn't get traded to the Dolphins. I thought that was very interesting that Vic Fangio brought that up during his presser and said, yeah, I really like Milton Williams. Wish we had him in Miami. Could you imagine if Howie Roseman traded him to the Dolphins? You get Vic Fangio a year later. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Milton this year.
I actually said the same thing. I'm interested to see how what kind of role do they now create, or is it a bit? I always liked Milton Williams. In fact, last year, I thought Milton Williams was going to have a bigger role, and unfortunately he did not. He was one of those guys, if you remember, he was the guy that they drafted, and there was that video between Howie Roseman and whoever the other guy was, and they looked like they had a disagreement, and Milton Williams was the guy they ended up drafting. And he was a freakish athlete, and we just, the one year he had 4.5 sacks in half, he doesn't play a lot of snaps, but he has athletic ability, and I thought, man, if he could double his snaps and get double the output, you got a pretty damn good player there. So I'm interested to see what Fangio sees in him and how he would use him if that's a guy he was going to target in a trade. The problem is now becoming, look, he mentions that with Milton Williams. Okay, that's interesting. Jalix Hunt's a guy that he talked about today. Anybody have any anticipation for Jalix Hunt to do anything on this team? Probably not. Nolan Smith, everybody's talking about, man, he could be awesome this year. Okay, well, where's he getting on the field? Whose reps are he taking? Whose snaps is he taking? You've got Bryce Huff, who he hasn't talked all that well about, and they paid him a lot of money. Josh Sweat is back, so I'm very intrigued to see what Milton Williams' role is. Is he going to be more of a tackle? Is he going to be more on the edge now? Because he's been a guy that's bouncing up and down the line.
Yeah, he's been on the interior. He's been on the edge as well. So I'm curious to see if this is somebody he really wanted to go after. He targeted how he says no, and he wanted on his roster down in Miami. He's probably going to get a decent amount of snaps this year. I'm curious to see what way. Maybe he utilizes him in both. Maybe he utilizes him on the inside as well and gets creative in Milton Williams' skill set and uses his skill set in different types of ways. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting comment from Fangio, that he was so intrigued by Milton Williams and what he brings to the table that he was trying to trade for him while he was in Miami, but how he wouldn't give him up because he knew Fangio was going to be here the following year, you could say. But that's my 4-pack for you today, Mike. We got Birds, we got Sixers, we got flag football. Phil's, a lot of stuff today to cover.
Yep, and the Phils tonight at 10:10. That lineup will be out probably sometime during game night tonight. So listen for Josh for the lineup tonight. And of course, we'll have more of Knicks Nuggets tomorrow here on the Sports Bash. By the way, you got Glasnow and Nola tonight. Very good pitching matchup. Sanchez and Kershaw, 2 lefties tomorrow, and then Stone and Tyler Phillips will be the rubber match on Wednesday. Your boy Tyler Phillips let you down.
Tyler Phillips bounce back game coming on Wednesday. All right, 10-10. That's going to be the one I stay up for the full game for.
Good stuff. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. All right, man, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, talk to you tomorrow, Mike.
All right, there's Knicks Nuggets today on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, you heard him talk about Vic Fangio. You're going to hear from Vic Fangio. What did Vic Fangio say that really stood out today about some of the defensive players? Well, he said a lot today, and you'll hear from the defensive coordinator coming up at 5 o'clock tonight on the Sports Bash, plus the Big Three, and Charles Barkley had some interesting things to say. You'll hear what he had to say later on in the show as well. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. And don't forget, make an appointment Friday, August 23rd. Happy Hour Friday is on the road again at Vagabond EHT. We'll be out there with Bud Light specials celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We invite you to come out Friday, August 23rd to Vagabond EHT.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
5 o'clock, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. This hour brought to you by Kia Acura of Atlantic City. For a great car buying experience, go see Rocco at Kia Acura Atlantic City, Tilton Road EHT, your small but friendly dealer, online at KiaAcuraAtlanticCity.com. We've got Eagles and Ravens Friday night right here with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on 97.3 ESPN. And today, we got a chance to hear from Vic Fangio. Now, Fangio, he's an older guy. He is a veteran defensive coordinator. Merrill Reese was saying last week, he kind of reminds him of like the old school Jim Johnson, more of the gruff defensive coordinators that generally the fans have connected with. I will say this. Vic Fangio runs a style of defense that I don't think the fans are going to like. He does not blitz a whole heck of a lot, but he does keep it real. He does tell it like it is. And he was on full display today, as he was his last time that he spoke, talking a little bit about some of the things you can expect, including stuff on Nakobe Dean, his assessment of the linebackers, why he thinks the linebackers are so important in NFL defenses. He also talked about Zach Bond and how he could use him this year. Gave an update on Quinyon Mitchell. He also said there was a player on the Eagles' current roster that he wanted to trade for when he was in Miami. So let's get into some of the what Vic said. Could be a new segment on the Sports Bash this football season when Fangio meets with the media.
Yeah, this keeps up, Mike. We may have to do complete shows, full 4 hours of the Sports Bash on Vic Fangio, so the content he's generating for conversation. Let's start with, he was asked about specifically Nakobe Dean, because obviously he is a guy that a lot of people are keeping an eye on. And, well, Mike, as you would expect, Vic Fangio gave a keeping it real assessment of the former Georgia linebacker.
I thought Nakobe had the first few days of practice, I thought he played really good. And, took a step back a little bit in the stadium practice, but overall he's been doing really good.
So Nakobe's interesting because I think a lot of people just assumed that he was going to be the starter with Devin White.
Right.
He said that he first through a couple days of practice, he's played really good. McMullen was on with us earlier today, though, and said most days it's been White and Bond have been the two linebackers.
Correct. So for those who don't know, almost every day at training camp practice, the primary two linebackers with the first team have been Bond and White. And then Dean is typically the guy who rotates in for Bond. So if you want to look at least the reps that they're getting in practice, Dean has consistently been getting the number 3 linebacker. Now, it doesn't mean he has no role in the team, Mike, but it's obvious that at least as of right now.
Well, let me ask you, you're a college football guy, and everybody loved Dean, and when he was in the draft, we got to get this guy in the first round. People were like going crazy when the first round came and they passed on him, and the second round came and they passed on him. They ended up getting him in the third round. Are we disappointed with who Nakobe Dean is as an NFL player?
Yes, but mostly because of the injuries.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to say that he as a individual player disappointed because he hasn't been on the field enough.
I agree with that. The times he has played, though, he hasn't really wowed me. And
That's
you could
true.
say he hasn't played enough, and I would agree with that. I'm just saying, the times he's been on the field, he hasn't done much to make me say, wow, like this is why this guy was a tremendous college player.
Correct.
And many people thought first round pick, and he ends up going in the third round. Are we seeing why he was a third round pick? Maybe.
I think we are a little bit because, and it kind of goes to what Fangio said about inside linebackers. If we can jump to that real quick, because I think his explanation of inside linebacker play in the NFL probably gives the audience the understanding, Mike, of why Dean is in the position that he's in. This was Vic Fangio this morning.
I think every defense in the NFL relies on high-level production from the ILBs, especially with the way the game's being played now. ILB used to be a position where you somewhat could overachieve and be a tough guy. But when the fullback disappeared and he's been replaced by a third wideout or a second tight end that's a good receiver, the game's played in space more. But yet they still run the ball a good deal. So the ILB position has become a more demanding position in this last decade or so.
Yeah, for a couple reasons. One, as he said, the fullback's not there, so teams are throwing, but they're still running the ball just without the fullback. So
Correct.
You've got to have an ILB, an inside linebacker, who is able to both defend against the run, but then cover third. Sometimes you're in the slot. You're spread out, and you got to go with that tight end who's split out there, or the tight end's tight to the line, but coming over the middle, and you've got to try to run with these new tight ends that are just fast and athletic.
Right.
It's a hard position. It's almost like the linebacker is akin to like the power forward in the NBA. Like the power forward's gone. The old power forward who was the 6'9" guy who just dominated on the boards, got a lot of rebounds, and was the tough guy. You know, your Charles Oakleys, you know, that
Brian
kind of Anthony
Grant.
Mason, those type of players. The linebacker used to be, you know, a big physical, just kind of, you know, filled the hole and made tackles. Well, now those guys have to be able to turn their hips and run.
But I think the big key for me, Mike, was what he said, the overachiever guys, you know, and this is no diss on guys like Sam Mills back in the day, or Bart Scott in the 2000s, or Jeremiah Trotter, who is still a legend in the city of Philadelphia. Those guys would not have the same role in today's game because, as Fangio said, those guys were overachievers. They were guys that played above their potential, and so they were able to carve out a role for them. Now, you can't be an overachiever and be a great inside linebacker anymore because you have to cover. You have to be able to read the run blocks. You have to be able to do more. And I asked the question, is Nakobe Dean not a good enough all-around linebacker to be in that role that Fangio describes?
I think one of the things that was supposed to be attractive about Nakobe Dean was that he was that guy that could be and that's what I liked about him. I thought you were going to get a playmaking guy who can help out in both the pass game and against the run. He was an instinctive linebacker who can run with these tight ends, and that has not been the case.
But now he's stuck behind a guy in Zach Bond who has very little experience, an inside linebacker who's more of a playmaker is Bond. White is more of a playmaker. These are not traditional fundamental linebackers.
Yeah, don't know enough about Bond because he hasn't played all that much. He's been a special teams guy, and he's been a guy who's, you know, an athlete. But, you know, I think Fangio did kind of single him out again about his versatility.
He still has that versatility, and that's kind of what I was saying before, learning our team as we go through the rest of camp. You know, we'll be able to use him in different ways because of his versatility.
This is now 4 straight press conferences Fangio has talked about Bond. It's obvious this guy has some sort of plan for him in this defense.
It sounds like it. And you know, I brought up a couple of times to the various beat guys who have been on the show is, hey, last year he took Van Ginkel and made a position out of that.
Correct.
Is there a guy on the roster who he can kind of mold as this team's version of Van Ginkel?
Yep, his name is Zach Bond, apparently.
Well, we'll see. We'll see, because Van Ginkel's a guy who had like 10.5 sacks last year. If he's using Zach Bond in that mold, that's a different position than linebacker.
I will say Van Ginkel was more of like a joker linebacker. For those who don't know, the joker linebacker is a guy who lines up all over the formation. He's a guy that doesn't stay, he's not a stationary position. So if you look at what he did with Andrew Van Winkle in Miami.
Van Ginkel.
Van Ginkel?
Ginkel with a G, yeah.
So Van Ginkel, if you're lining him all up over the formation, he's not staying in one spot every time. You know, it's like, you know, you go back in the day when the Eagles had Connor Barr when he was almost on the one edge, right? But every once in a while you move him up and down the line and you see him be a versatile piece. I'm assuming maybe that's what Bond is. Maybe Bond is a guy they're moving up and down the line. Maybe he doesn't stay stationary to one side or the other.
Yeah, I definitely think that Zach Bond is a guy that if you're saying he's a big weapon, by the way, it looks like Brandon Ayuk is getting traded.
Finally?
It appears that something could be happening there. There's a lot of talk about that happening. I don't know if it's official yet, but it looks like Ayuk, which this is kind of interesting in terms of the Eagles and everything, is because I see something. I'm trying to find another backing of that, but it's all over it's kind of all over. Yes and no. So we'll see. I just throwing that out there to kind of keep an eye on that, but I'll try to see if we can get a better, on that. that being said, the Baun thing, I guess the question goes, if Zach Baun is a player that you have high expectations for, what does that mean about your defense? You know, like, it's not to say that he can't be a good player, but he just really hasn't. Now, has he just been not used in the right way in New Orleans?
It's certainly possible. I mean, there has been criticism of Dennis Allen since he became head coach that as a head coach, you know, he's struggled at times calling the defense and being the head coach. You know, people were critical of a guy like Brandon Staley, had the same problem for the Chargers. So maybe it's possible that, you know, he is just someone that has not been unlocked.
Yeah, and look, I hope that they can find a very cool role for him. Right? A role for him, I should say. I hope that they can find a role to which, you know, another coach hasn't been able to think outside the box to get out of him. But, you know, Zach Baun is a guy they obviously targeted in free agency. They brought him here. I don't know what the connection was with Fangio, why he wanted this particular player, but he is a guy who has not really done much in his NFL career so far. He has basically been a special teams player.
Yeah, and by the way, they signed another special teams linebacker today, Shaq Quarterman, and
from Miami,
the University of Miami.
Yeah,
yes.
the U.
Yeah, the U. He played for Jacksonville.
I do remember him at the U. He has not done anything in the pros.
Well, he's been a special teams guy in Jacksonville. He's typically playing 50% or more of the the special teams snaps in Jacksonville. That's what Baun basically did, and when you see a guy like Quarterman get signed, right, a guy who has almost purely been a special teams contributor, and you see here Fangio talking about a guy like Baun, who has purely been a special teams contributor for the most part in New Orleans, pair that with this statement from him about he feels like they have been getting mixed results from the linebackers in training camp.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of reps in it, but overall it's been good at times, not so good at other times. We need to win a high percentage of the battles when we go against a running back. And some guys have been good, some not so up to this point.
Yeah, he doesn't seem thrilled with his linebackers.
No, he's not thrilled. And it kind of gets back to the question of...
Well, the question originally, I think, was about Devin White. And he said, what's the evaluation of the linebackers so far? And he says, of him? And then the guy said, well, of all of them. Yeah, we haven't had a lot of reps.
Yeah. But the larger thing is we talked about Nakobe Dean. So, Mike, if you know that Dean he's not ascending up the chart, right? He's not getting past that certain line when it comes to linebacker play. They bring in another linebacker who pretty much his entire career has been special teams. Mm-hmm. And you hear Fangio say, yeah, I'm not thrilled with these results so far. It does kind of make you wonder about the direction of this team right now, right?
Well, I mean, look, it's either he's brutally honest or he's just saying, yeah, everybody could be better. You know, like we're 8 days into camp here. You know, you always wonder what the motivation is when the coach is not giving, you know, the highest of high praise for all the players. You know, every time you hear questions being asked, mostly in today's day and age, it's, oh, yeah, he looks great. He's having a great camp. Yeah, we really love what he's doing. You know, Vic Fangio giving it to you from the other side of the coin here is, well, yeah, he's okay. He can be better. And maybe that's just a little bit more motivational tactic because I know a lot of the players today, Reed Blankenship was talking about how Fangio has kind of showed them a lot of video of how to kind of play very aggressively and with that toughness, but within the rules.
Yeah, and we know Nick Sirianni keeps talking about toughness and relentless effort, and that's been his buzzwords this year in training camp, and so I'm assuming there's a little pairing going on there.
Yeah, Blankenship said Fangio is constantly showing the Eagles defense clips of tough physical play within the rules, and that he wants to identify this defense to be physicality, and he feels the Eagles did not do a good job of being tough last year. I mean, so he's hitting all of the points that all of the Eagle fans definitely want to hear. Physicality, toughness, physical play, all of those things. I mean, so far Fangio is winning the press conference. But I definitely stress that Fangio runs a defensive scheme similar to John Gannon. So I don't know that you're going to like the aesthetics of the defense. That's all.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think the fans, listen, there's some fans, no matter what you do, how many times, Mike, have you said you give them a bag of money, they complain how heavy it is. So,
it's going on with the baseball team too. Thompson's the biggest problem. They got to get rid of him. He's a moron. That kind of stuff. And it's, right now, I mean, there's a guy, over on X the Phillies got to bench Bryce Harper. I mean, this is what we're getting at. I mean, come on, seriously. We're talking about bench. Like, that's not the problem with the team. So yeah, I get it. Everybody, like Thompson, we got to pick on somebody when the team's not playing well and the stars aren't playing well. We don't want to criticize the stars, so we go to the Thompson's an idiot.
Right. And so you'll probably see the same thing during the Eagles season if the Eagles have a rough day at the office.
Well, it's like we asked earlier today. We were talking to Bob Wankel. We talked to Mike McGarry. I asked if they had a problem with bringing Hoffman in the sixth inning of that game. And McGarry brought up, look, the pockets of hitters that were up in the sixth with what you have. Your closer now is Estevez, who's right-handed. So he's going to be the guy that's scheduled in the ninth.
Right.
If your pocket of hitters is coming up, has right-handers coming up in the sixth, you're going to go to Hoffman ahead instead of Strom.
Right.
So that's the right spot in the game for Hoffman. He didn't get the job done.
Right.
So you say, why are you bringing Hoffman in the fifth inning? Well, what other right-handed pitcher did you want to come in that spot?
Right. Who else do you trust in that situation to go up against those hitters?
Seriously, my buddy's looking at me. He said, "Why is he going to Hoffman here?" And I said, "Well,
look who's at bat."
Well, exactly. Who do you want him to go to in this spot? You traded Dominguez away, so you don't have that extra right-hander in that key spot. So again, we're blaming the manager for him basically following what he should have been doing there. Again, you had a 5-run lead. If I go to Hoffman in the 6th, Strom in the 7th, Alvarado in the 8th, and Estevez in the 9th, and everybody does their job,
you win.
You win the game. Now you're blaming the manager because he brought his best reliever in, or one of his best 3 relievers in a key spot in that game. I mean, it's moronic.
And that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, I mean, you don't have another righty. What right-handed pitcher did you want him to bring in that moment?
I can't name one.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, a lot of times, we like to blame the manager or the coach when we don't want to blame the players. But, I mean, in that situation, Hoffman, come on, man. You can't give up 4 runs with a 5-run lead, especially when your team is struggling. And Kobe Allard is giving you everything he's got,
Poor Kobe Allard. He did his best.
Yeah, I mean, Kobe Allard pitched 4 innings. He gets you to the 6th. You bring Hoffman in, and Hoffman, you're facing a Rosarena, a right-handed hitter. Raleigh is another right-handed. He struck him out. Right. He hit a guy, right? He hit somebody.
He hit Hediger, right?
No, he hit the guy from the Dodgers. The guy, he played for the Blue Jay. Oh, Turner. He hit Turner. Oh, you can't hit Turner. He stinks. And then Polanco singles, and the next thing
singled, right?
Yeah. So he brings the right guy in the game. The guy didn't do his job because, all right, you got 3 right-handed bats in a row. What right-handed pitcher would you have rather seen him bring in that spot?
Not Junior Marte.
Exactly. You know what? Marte in any spot. Or Ruiz. Anytime Ruiz.
The answer is Jeff Hoffman. The answer clearly is Hoffman.
Right. So my buddy, he says to me, why is he bringing Hoffman in here? Like he's dumbfounded. Like the guy's an idiot. So I said, what right-hander? And by the way, remember, Kerkering started the game.
Correct.
So he was not available either.
So now you're already down a guy.
You can't go to Kerkering. And I'm just trying to go off of memory here because they've made some changes. They don't have Dominguez anymore. Ruiz and Marte, your only other 2 guys. So your options in that spot against right-handed hitters were either Hoffman or Estevez.
Correct.
Unless you said, well, why not go to Strom? Well, Strom's a lefty.
And you got righties at bat.
You got 3 righties back to back to back. Dumbfounding.
You want to get back to Fangio?
Go for it.
So I want to go to the defensive line because I know you were mentioning about Milton Williams earlier, but I want to get to the part before he gets to Milton Williams because I thought the comment that he made about he was asked about, the roster construction, right? Hey, how many defensive linemen do you think you're going to need on this team for the way you want to play defense? And I thought his answer was enlightening about how he looks at these players. And I think if you listen to the way he verbalizes it, Mike, it's going to give you and everybody else an idea that he doesn't see these guys the same way maybe previous coaches have seen them.
In the past here, they've counted guys like Sweat and Huff as D linemen, where they're more edge players, outside linebackers, the pure D linemen, D tackles. I don't want to speak. They'll need to be a minimum of 5 to 7 on the roster.
That's a very clear sign that he's saying, look, take out Huff, Sweat, maybe like a Brandon Graham, take the Nolan Smith. They are not on the D-line category for Vic Fangio. He's saying I need 5 to 7 pure defensive linemen to run this defense right.
Yeah, I mean, and we were wondering if he was going to rotate the guys as much as like John Gannon did. Jim Schwartz was a guy who rotated a guy because there was a lot of stuff reporting that said he didn't rotate his guys as much.
Right. Now, there's also speculation that part of the reason why he doesn't rotate guys because he didn't always have guys to rotate. So there's always that question as well. But it's a clear distinction, Mike, that if, when we're sitting down having conversations, when you and John McMullen or you and Jeff Mosher and whoever comes on, when you guys talking about projecting the 53-man roster, I think Fangio gave you a clue of how that roster is going to be constructed already.
Yeah, I listen, that keeps, we were talking about this earlier, that keeps me intrigued on how these preseason games might go, because what does he do with Hunt? What does he do with Huff? What does he do with Smith? Sweat? Is it Huff and Sweat that they're the starters and they get him how do you find more playing time for some of these guys?
It's a good question. Now, one guy who I think might be getting some playing time is Milton Williams. Very interesting answer when he was asked specifically about Milton Williams for the Eagles, Vic Fangio.
Yeah, I like Milton. Milton's a good player. He's solid, both versus the run and in pass rush. He's a guy that I've, from afar, have liked, that the Eagles have had. In fact, I tried to get us to trade for him last year in Miami, but Howie wouldn't do it. But I like Milt. Milt's a pro.
That whole conversation there about Milt Williams is definitely added to the intrigue now of another guy of where does he use him? How does he get him playing time? Because, generally he's quote unquote a defensive tackle,
correct,
but he tested that he could play up and down the line. You can move him, bump him to the outside. So I'm interested to see if he does get some reps on the outside.
I mean, there's a possibility. I mean, we've seen Fangio run some pretty interesting formations in the past. There's a possibility on third down. Fangio says, hey, look, I'm going to put out there Jordan Davis in the middle, and I'm going to put Jalen Carter and Milton Williams on each side of them, and I put 2 edge rushers on the outside of them. And to, go hunt, boys. There's a possibility. He's done defenses like that before, where he has beefed up that D line and just told everybody else to go cover.
Yeah. Listen, the Milton Williams, hey, we tried to trade for him there. He just kind of slips that in there. I think is
Howie wouldn't do it.
Howie wouldn't do it.
Smart move by Howie then, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Howie's the one who wanted to keep him or drafted him. And remember the whole thing
with Tom Donahue.
Yeah.
Tom Donahue was really ticked off that Howie wanted to try to dap him up in that video. Tom Donahue gave him the bleep you look.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned Jalix Hunt, Mike. Vic Fangio on Jalix Hunt, the 3rd round draft pick in this year's draft for the Eagles.
I think he started camp good. He had a carryover from a pretty good offseason. And when the pads came on, you could tell that, playing for Cornell and Houston Baptist wasn't exactly the same as the NFL. But he's grinding, and I expect him to continue to improve.
That sounds more like a canned answer.
Yeah. He was probably coached up on that answer.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, just more of a generic, he's doing a good job and,
But I thought it was interesting. He said, look, Cornell, Houston Baptist, they ain't the same as the NFL, man. That was kind of maybe his way of saying, look, this guy ain't ready, man.
Yeah.
I agree. We like his potential, but he ain't there yet.
Yep.
Finally, Mike, interesting comment about Quinyon Mitchell from Vic Fangio, because, Quinyon Mitchell's been getting a ton of reps at the nickel corner spot. There's been a lot of times in training camp they have had either Isaiah Rodgers or Keely Ringo on the outside across from Darius Slay, and it's been Quinyon Mitchell who's been getting the reps at the nickel corner. Vic Fangio on Mitchell's ability to play corner and outside.
Because I do think when you, drafted a corner per se in the first round, he needs to be a corner. And then if he can play inside, that's a bonus. And this is a bonus right now that he's been able to play inside. We still really like him as a corner, though, too.
Yeah, that whole, he's talking about Quinyon Mitchell, right? Yeah, to me, I said this last week, you draft that guy that high, you want him to be your corner. If he loses out to Eli Ricks or Josh Jobe, that's not a good sign, So if his versatility, did you have inside versatility in your head? He said, no, that wasn't part of the equation. We're drafting this guy to be our outside stud corner. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
Absolutely. Because what he's basically telling you is that, hey, we didn't draft this guy with the idea that he was going to be our nickel corner as a rookie. But, hey, it's a bonus he can be because now we have another way to get him on the field.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. I have a guy who's actually trying to convince me that the Phillies should have left Kobe Allard in that game. Jesus God.
Good for that person.
Kobe Allard stinks. You got 4 innings out of him. How much more? That's like the guy who says Tyler Phillips is the shutdown guy. No, you got 4 innings out of him. Be happy with that. You have 4 innings out of a guy who stinks. You have a left-handed pitcher against the middle of their lineup. 2, 3, and 4, all right-handed hitters. To take Allard out of the game is the move. You have an all-star pitcher. He just didn't have it. To sit here and try to convince me that you have to keep Kobe Allard in the game, what is going on out there? What is what is wrong with people? I know glue is easy to sniff, but stop doing it. More Sports Bash coming up.
You're listening to the Sports.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say, I'm sorry. And then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
At 5:34, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. A couple text messages. Mike, I've been saying Harper has to get going for the team will follow. Hope yesterday was a sign. Now that is a level-headed one right there. Yes. Harper gets going. Things kind of the mojo changes. You need Harper. You need Turner. You need those guys, right? But really, the reality is the guys that you leaned on in the first half, you have to make sure that they could do it again in the second half, right? You have Jeff Hoffman, who makes the All-Star game. You didn't think Jeff Hoffman was an All-Star at the beginning of this year, so you have to find out whether or not he's that guy still. Matt Strahm, same thing. Matt Strahm has never been an All-Star before, so I have to find out whether or not what I saw in the first half is also sustainable in the second half. Kobe Allard is a guy with an ERA of 6, all right? He has a career ERA of 6. He did his job. Sometimes it's okay just to say, look, they made a move, and the guy who has been the All-Star did not perform. You don't say, give me Kobe Allard for another, let me roll Kobe Allard out there for another round against the middle of their order. It's the same thing. We talked about it Friday. Tyler Phillips had been great until he wasn't. There's a reason why Kobe Allard and Tyler Phillips and Michael Mercado, who was great in his first start, well, then he got around the lineup again and gave up 3 bombs. Look, Kobe Allard did a great job. No one's actually, he pitched okay. He wasn't even that good. I mean, he gave up a run or 2. He walked 2 guys, but he did a good job. He kept them in that game.
Yeah, he didn't implode. He was serviceable.
He was like, he got around the lineup a couple times. I mean, he was coming around the second time. That's enough for Kobe Allard, right? Listen, Kobe Allard for the Braves, 6.57 ERA. Texas, 7.29 ERA. Before that, 5.41, 7.75, 4.96, 12.38. There's a reason why I don't want to see Kobe Allard go around the lineup. Yes, he was having a good night, but I'm turning the game over to Jeff Hoffman. How are we complaining about that? I mean, what is wrong with us?
It's ridiculous. I told you, people just like to complain sometimes. They just love to find a guy to blame, and they will, no matter what, they will find a reason to blame that guy. That is, by
the way, I mean, that's what the Phillies want. Every game, if they have a chance to get their starter to the 6th, they have some combination of Hoffman, Strahm, Alvarado, and Estevez now. They want those guys pitching the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Now, hopefully they can get the starter into the 7th, so they have 4 of those guys for 3 innings.
Right.
So that you don't have to rely on 4 of the guys to pitch because if you're asking 4 guys to do their job, there's a possibility that one of the 4 don't have it on that day.
Well, because again, the part of the point of this all is that you acquired Estevez and Banks because of the idea that you had pitched Hoffman and Alvarado 40% of the games this year in the first half. Strahm pitched 41% of the games. We talked about this weeks ago, Mike. You had to acquire more arms so you don't burn out your main 3 guys. Okay, you brought in Estevez. You got rid of Soto. You replaced him, right? So now this is the plan going forward. You want to use these guys in a way that's not going to overwork them. And guess what? Games like Saturday, they happen.
Yeah, they happen a lot. I can't stress enough. You have guys like a Kobe Allard and a Tyler Phillips. They have roles on teams. You overexpose those guys, those roles begin to get exposed.
And guess what? Maybe if Taijuan Walker was healthy or Turnbull was healthy, you don't have to put Kerkering out there as the opener. Maybe Kerkering's the guy coming in that 6th inning instead, and you save Hoffman for later in the game.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Kerkering, that's probably a spot that Kerkering would have came in the game. Instead they started Kerkering,
correct,
which they did a couple times before because of the fact that right-handers
at the top
of the lineup.
Yeah. So, listen, I get it. I get why they're doing it, but listen, you can be upset with the outcome of the Phillies game and not look at it as Rob Thompson's an idiot. Rob Thompson did what he's supposed to do.
Listen, you could ask 10 baseball people and 5 might say you make the move and the other 5 say you don't make the move. There is no right answer here, but I had no problem with Kobe Allard, who stinks out loud, who was pitching well. I saw enough of Kobe Allard. I didn't need to see Kobe Allard continue to go because eventually Kobe Allard will turn into
Kobe Allard.
There you go.
Yes.
I have no problem saying, you know what? I'm going to go to my all-star in this spot, and I have another all-star behind him, and I have a new closer still to go, and I have Alvarado. So in that situation, I don't have an issue with it. Now, there are times where I like the starting pitcher to stay longer or pitch longer or deeper into games. Sure. But in this situation, when you had an opener and then a guy like Kobe Allard who really gave you way more than you thought you were going to get out of him, I think he did his job. You say, hey, great job. Let's turn it over to an all-star. and hey, you did your job. The all-star didn't. And I don't think anybody can argue with that.
Speaking of all-stars, Mike, let's do a couple quick hits here for the big 3. So Charles Barkley was a guest on the Podcast P with Paul George podcast. Mm-hmm. I am not going to get used to that name. It's going to be difficult for me the entire year. I'm going to get better at this. So Barkley was on there, and the topic of Joel Embiid came up. And I don't think anything Barkley said anyone will disagree with, but I definitely think the forcefulness of how he said it was definitely eye-opening. And there was no point where Paul George turned around to Barkley and said, no, man, you're wrong, or no, man, you don't understand. No, he let Charles Barkley say it, and he had no pushback. Charles Barkley talked about how he hopes the Olympics, Mike, are a wake-up call for Joel Embiid.
I hope this is a wake-up for Joel, this Olympic experience. He has not played well, and I'm hoping he's like, yo, man, I got to get in better shape. Because me personally, I think that's one of the reasons he's always injured. I don't think he's in good enough shape. But I think the way he's played, which is not well during the Olympics, should be a wake-up call for him. Like, I got to get in better shape. I got to get healthy. Because if we don't win the championship or go deep in the playoffs, it's going to be because of me.
I've said the same thing, a little bit different. You know, I hope this is a wake-up call for him on how to be a better leader, how to be a champion, being around those guys. I didn't even care if I saw him play, and Barkley's right. He has not played well in these Olympics. I will say the Olympic game is not really catered towards big men. That being said, this goes back to something that was said on Friday's show, Joe Fortenbaugh, like, Jokic, the elite players, he would not play if he was on the team. He might be right about that. That being said, the point that Barkley makes that I put more than anything is Joel Embiid, I said it at the end of the season. He needs to it's like a wrestler who has to change his character. You're on TV for so long, the character gets stale. You got to freshen the character up. Joel Embiid needs to drop 25, 30 pounds and freshen up the character. We all know that he can score 35 a game, grab 10 rebounds, and do his thing. But what's preventing him from going to the next level is being healthy enough to do that in the playoffs. So he's got to change his character, and he's got to be a smaller, slimmer version of himself.
And Barkley addresses that as well on the Podcast P with Paul George podcast.
He keeps getting hurt, and like I said, he got to take some responsibility for that. Bringing in you, Maxey's stud, bringing in all those other guys. If Joel don't do his thing, the Sixers are not going to win. And like I said, he has not played well at his Olympic games at all. And I'm hoping somebody can get to him and say, yo, man, you need to get in better shape, because you got to be a little bit embarrassed the way you played in the Olympics.
Yeah, I hope he takes it personal, by the way. I think, I hope he takes it like people are questioning whether or not I'm good enough, whether or not I belong on this team. I don't know that Joel has that kind of personality, though. You remember he got called out by Shaq and Barkley a couple of years ago on TNT, and they really blasted him, and then he came on, he had like a 50-point game or something like that. Was that the game against the Lakers? And then they said, we're just tough on you because we think you get, and it's like he does it one night, but the consistency's not there. I don't know that Joel takes these things to heart, And
I think that's the frustrating part, because you people like Shaq and Charles and all of us see what he's capable of, but then you want to see more of it. Barkley also brought up another part that he wants Embiid to get better at, because he said, when you're playing with guys in the Olympics, there's a correlation between that and the Sixers now, he pointed to on Paul George's podcast.
When he comes back to the NBA, some nights Max going to have it going. He not going to get the ball. Some nights you're going to be going off. He's not going to get the ball. He can't mope around. He's got to be like, okay, it's Paul's night. Okay, it's Max night. What can I do when I don't get the ball? I'm hoping it's a good learning experience from him, number one, from a physical standpoint, but also because it's going to make his life so much damn easier.
I do think there's a element of Embiid that does feel happy for other guys when they play well. Like when Maxey's played well, like he has, when Harden played well, like he did have joy and happiness, it felt like, when those nights occurred. And I do think he wants to see Maxey succeed. I don't know what his relationship's like with Paul George, but apparently he went out and targeted him. So I don't think that Embiid is selfish in that matter. Like, I have to score 35. You know what I mean?
No, but I think Chuck is right that there is sometimes a look of body language when he's on the bench of this level of indifference or whatever kind of attitude. Now, as we know, body language can be a bad thing to read because it's not always the most accurate to who a guy is deep down inside. But, you do have to wonder, Joel has never played on a team like this before. And now maybe being at the Olympics is an opportunity for him to say, hey, this is what it's like to be part of a team that doesn't need me to be the star. Yeah,
I this whole Olympic thing, and I got to be honest, I haven't watched a lot of the basketball at all. I don't even know when they play half the time. The fact though, I know he played his best game the other day.
Correct, the last game.
The last game they played, but this has not been a good Olympics for him. It has not. It has not made people say this is one of the best players in the world. That's for sure.
No, not at all. Barkley did use an analogy between his own experience playing the league. He said there was a huge difference for him. How he said one of the reasons why he hopes Embiid learns from this is because Chuck said he became a better player when he played with better players.
I played on all those
Sixer team. They were running me in the ground. I got the ball every time up and down the court. I was getting my 30 a night, but it was the hardest damn 30 in the world. And when I got traded to Phoenix and they gave me Dan Marley and Kevin Johnson, I'm like, damn, this is the easiest 26 I've ever got in my life.
Right.
Because I don't have to get to, I said, I don't have to score every time down the court. I played better defense. My rebounding was good again. Because it's so much fun to play with great players. Mm-hmm. And it's so much easier.
Well, listen, you got better players. Everything is easier for you. They can't put as much attention on you when they have to put others. Embiid, he's been in a weird situation. The Simmons thing, Simmons was not a shooter, so the floor was, not ideal for Joel's skill set. The Jimmy Butler, another guy who's not a great shooter, right? Not a great shooter, so he's a guy who wants to take the ball to the basket. He hasn't had the right element or mix. The Harden thing worked a little bit, and the injuries came into play. I mean, if Joel Embiid doesn't get hurt, we don't know what kind of conversations we're having. But the problem is he's constantly got hurt, so I think that, it's fair to bring up.
Very fair to bring up.
By the way, he led the Americans in minutes on Saturday with 23. Him and Tatum, two guys. Tatum, who didn't play at all the one game.
Yep,
he
didn't play another game.
And Embiid, who didn't play in one game. Those two guys led the team in minutes the other day. And Embiid was 6 of 14 with 15 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. So, we obviously know that Embiid can play. This is not the best setting for him.
No, but like Chuck is saying, hopefully this is a learning experience for him that he can come back to the Sixers and be better for it.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Good stuff from Barkley on the podcast P. Good sound there. We got plenty more to go. This hour of the show brought to you by Kia Acura of Atlantic City. Hey, go by and say hello to my friend Rocco at Kia Acura, Tilton Road EHT. Do yourself a favor and test drive that 2024 MDX. Just give it a ride and see what happens. I guarantee you give that thing a ride, you're going to be thinking about it. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm still driving that 2024 MDX. It is great. It's a great ride. Get on over to Kia Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road in Egg Harbor Township. Your small but friendly dealer. We wrap up the show coming up next.
You're listening to The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, 5:54, get ready to wrap up the show. We got a big show tomorrow. We'll recap the Phils and the Dodgers. It's Nola and Glasnow. I'm a big Glasnow fan, but I'm rooting for Nola obviously tonight. But I do like Tyler Glasnow. They upgraded their pitching staff with Glasnow. They got Yamamoto, who's obviously hurt. They got Kershaw back. They added Jack Flaherty. So the biggest Achilles heel for the Dodgers last year was their pitching was awful last year. Awful in the playoffs last year. That's why they lost. I had the argument with my buddy. I said I would rather play the Dodgers than Arizona. He said, get out of here. I said, I would much rather face the Dodgers pitching than the Arizona pitching. Not that the Arizona pitching was great, but it was better than the Dodger pitching.
And
that bullpen, and you saw what happened. Pitching. Anything you're talking about. Like right now, you're looking for futures bets with long shot odds. I like San Diego, Arizona, Pittsburgh, because they got pitching.
Right.
In the American League, Seattle's interesting because of their pitching. Baltimore, I love that team, but man, their pitching just does not do enough for me.
That's not that good.
Not that good, and that to me is going to be their Achilles heel again. So, should be a fun 3-game set. It all starts tonight. Keep it locked to game night to see if the lineup is out. It should be out maybe right around the end of game night. We'll see. Usually about 3-4 hours before first pitch. It's a 10:10 first pitch tonight. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. We'll do it again tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.
America, we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights,
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By honoring your sacred vocation of education, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. At Grand Canyon University, our online bachelor's, master's, and doctoral education degree programs allow you to balance online coursework with observational and hands-on experience in the field. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.